OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Well. One of the great all-time sporting weekends, I think it's fair to say. Maybe we just needed Meath to pip the Dubs yesterday to get back into it, to bring the game to extra time. It's certainly one of the best GAA weekends ever. Add in the Open, add in the fact that everybody's watching Formula 1 again because of Netflix, and there's a crash in the first round of that. Add in Seamus Power winning for the first time on the PGA Tour, while a lot of people were too busy thinking about the Open to even pay attention. And certainly it was a weekend where the sport sizzled almost as much as the weather, Eoin.
It certainly did sizzle. It was, well, like, I mean, you really couldn't have asked for a better Irish summer sort of weekend. Everything kind of fell in together beautifully, really. And if you've got a good GAA weekend, it tends to coalesce nicely with good weather, it turns out.
Yeah, good weather really helps. Maybe we should put roofs over all of our stadiums. That should be the next.
Yeah, Ireland would be a great country if you could put a roof on it, because, you know, that way you could protect yourself from them rays. And yeah, a lot of red faces doing the rounds this morning, I suspect, in workplaces all over Ireland. And
red faces for anybody who predicted that Dublin were going to hammer Meath. I mean, I had to go out and pick up the kids at one point during the half-time analysis of the second game, and I tuned in to you. And Paddy Andrews was on going, this is going to be, watch what happens now. They're going to run the bench. It's going to be straightforward. They're going to run up the score. And could it be 20? Could it be 40 points? He didn't know. I'm paraphrasing.
No, but in fairness, I was prodding him along those lines. I mean, it took two to tango very much in that conversation, and that I was very much saying, you know, the Dubs are back, I think was the phrase I used multiple times in that first half.
Did you miss the opportunity to go Jacks are back? Did you?
I actually did.
Oh, come on.
We'll do it the next day when
open goal for you right there.
Kildare will surely be cannon fodder enough for them to prove that the Jacks are certainly back in the final. That your famous catchphrase, the anger is on. It seemed it was on for Dublin at a certain point, but it seems that you can turn that anger off as well after a little period of time. It just doesn't make sense, what we've seen on a number of occasions from Dublin so far this year.
OK, so give us your thoughts on that. Give us your thoughts on everything else that's happening on the over the weekend and for this week as well. We'll talk about the lines. I'll tell you what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. That's a good starting point for us at 7:33 this morning. A reminder, of course, OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. The performance rankings are coming right now. We'll talk about the sports pages, where the best thing essentially this morning, the most must-read thing is Ger Loughnane as usual. Sports pages, Carey and Downey talking hurling at 8:10. That's Anne Downey and Ciaran Carey talking about the incredible performance from Limerick in the second half against Tipperary after they got blown away in the first half. Anthony Moyles going to talk football at 8:45. We've Alan Quinlan talking the Lions. We've Tommy Walsh talking hurling at 9:35, and Paddy Andrews talking the weekend's football. So we are jam-packed with GAA, with rugby, and we'll also talk about everything else that you want us to as well. So make sure, if there is something you want to get off your chest, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. You can get us at Off the Ball AM, but it's time for the Gillette Performance Rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
So there's plenty to get into, to say at the very least. This is just one of those weekends where it's hard to categorise everything into bad and grand, because everything just seemed really, really good. So I apologise in advance to things that maybe seem harshly categorised as bad or grand. But there were a couple of things that we can look at and say that there were bad outcomes for a couple of people. One of those people, and we're going to start with the rugby, is Conor Murray. This isn't necessarily a reflection on any performance necessarily from Conor Murray or anything that he has necessarily done. This has just been a bad run of outcomes for Conor Murray. First of all, you have the situation of him coming off the high of being announced British and Irish Lions captain. Alan Jones with his arm hanging off. Could Alan Jones ever play Test rugby again at his age? Will we see him in the Six Nations? Those were the questions we were asking. Not could Alan Jones get on a plane after fixing his shoulder, but Mr. Bionic, and fly back to Cape Town and return to the camp. We weren't asking ourselves the question, could Ali Price usurp Conor Murray and actually take his jersey as the number 9? It looks like both of these things might actually happen over the course of the next week. Conor Murray, according to Rory O'Connor in the Irish Independent, is going to suffer the same fate as Peter O'Mahony and Brian O'Driscoll and be the latest sacrificial Irish lamb to the Kiwi slaughter this week because Warren Gatland just has to do it.
What do we ever do to you, Warren Gatland, apart from sacking you when you had like a really good record as the Ireland coach and not giving you the opportunity to cut your teeth properly and stab you in the back, to use your own words? What did we ever do to you, Warren Gatland, that you continuously rub our noses in it time after time after time after time?
I do wonder, and yeah, because this would be the cruelest one for Gatland to tickle our belly just a little bit.
Who's saying this now? Is this just because Stephen Jones said this last week and it's become voguish to go, oh, Ali Price, he should be in the team instead of Conor Murray? Is it now? It's grown legs, is it?
It has very much grown legs, and you even have even in the Sunday Times yesterday, it wasn't just Stephen Jones calling for Ali Price. Like Peter O'Reilly had Ali Price as his starting 9 in his team. Now, in fairness, Stuart Barnes stuck with Conor Murray as his starting 9. Yesterday's papers are basically full of people picking their 15. It's telling that Rory says his team to face South Africa at 9, Conor Murray would be starting. But conveniently beside it, he said the team Warren Gatland could pick. And at 9, he's gone for Ali Price there, which maybe will be closer to reality. He says that there were echoes of that in Cape Town on Saturday, echoes of the Brian O'Driscoll call, the Peter O'Mahony call. Asked about a scrum half situation in the post-match interview, Gatland's answer was telling. He used 117 words, including the names Ali and Gareth, but not one of them was Conor or Murray. Telling indeed, a man who knows how to use the media is Warren Gatland, and Conor Murray is going to be the guy who suffers this week.
So, for what it's worth, which is obviously not very much, but my prediction is that Conor Murray will start, and that actually the team that plays the first test is going to be more akin to the team that played against South Africa A, with the added with cavalry, as opposed to the team being the team at the weekend with the cavalry, if you know what I mean. That actually, because of COVID, because of the way Gatland, if you look back at his selections previously, when you thought he was just trying players out, he wasn't. He was actually building teams. And I think that my prediction is that because it was South Africa A, because it was against Faf de Klerk, that actually Gatland is going to value that much higher than the performances against the provinces who aren't playing with their best players, because their best players are playing with the South Africans, the senior side. So that's my prediction. Hold firm till the team is named. We'll obviously bring it to you across all of our social channels as soon as it's named. We'll bring you that game live, of course, on Off the Ball on Saturday on Newstalk and on the OTB Sports app. But
we will, just looking at some of the Ali Price content doing the rounds at the moment. Ali Price is being asked about Faf de Klerk in press conferences. He's being asked about going toe-to-toe with Faf de Klerk here. There is clearly a presumption. There is a level of colour writing about Ali Price at this point, which is only given to you if you are a guaranteed test starter. Take this from Gavin Mayers in The Telegraph, for example. As a schoolboy, Ali Price used to get up at 3 a.m. to start his shift in a summer job at a bakery. It was during those hours before dawn that he used to dream of one day playing for the Lions. Now, the pressure cooker of a test match against the Springboks await for the 28-year-old Scotland scrum half.
OK, well, maybe they actually have been tipped to the fact that he's going to start. Here, listen, we need something to write about here. What's going to give us something? I'll write about Ali Price this week. You won't go wrong.
It seems that way. It seems that there is a real sense that this is, this is likely to happen. There's no guarantees with Warren Gatland. You can never say that. And he will stir the pot. He loves to play these sort of games. And, himself and Razzie Erasmus, which we'll get into as the week goes on, has been a really interesting head-to-head.
Razzie, such a charming rogue. Like one of the most charismatic rogues who's like smiling away at you at the same time, slowly disemboweling you publicly. It's like, wow, I feel great that Razzie, you're my leader, and yet, well, I'm dead. Oh look, I've just been bodied. Well, what a man! Like and to do it so casually on Twitter, it's like, and with such a smile, it's brilliant, because it's not the type of thing I think that Gatland has come up against before. Mostly, it's narky, kind of the slightly elliptical Northern Hemisphere rugby inspired, even though it was Joe Schmidt that he would have been up against, where Joe would have been smiling away going, I'm gonna get you. Whereas with Razzie, it's like, genuinely, he seems to be enjoying the thrill of the fight, knowing that it's not quite an even fight.
I'd like to know who's the admin on the Irish Examiner Sport account, and like how do they react when Razzie Rasmus slid into their mentions there on Friday? It's like, whoa.
There's like a big red button that you go, alert, alert, we're about to make global news, hooray.
It's great. It's like, as you say, kind of like he's a man who'll stab you from the front, it seems, Razzie. And it's like himself and Gatland clearly is the battle you want to see on the sidelines. It's the battle you want to see in the build up to the first test. So plenty of storylines going into week one, but it does look like maybe it will be a very convoluted ploy if Gatland was actually planning on starting Murray at the weekend, because all the signs on the media side of things and within the camp suggest that Conor Murray is about to be removed as captain and as starting scrum half. Like, it's a brutal few weeks.
Is he on the bench?
Oh, I would have thought so. Like, obviously it's a 3-horse race. There's no guarantees. Like in the team Ron Gatland could pick in the Irish Independent, it's Murray is on the bench in that team. So
you know the whole.
So. Hello, you were saying O'Driscoll didn't even make the bench.
I've got to drop you. I mean, I'm gonna break your heart properly, so that when I need you again, at some point you're like very grateful, as opposed to, you know, playing angry.
Yeah, Luis Enrique didn't put Sergio Ramos on his squad. He left 2 places empty in his Spain squad for the Euros. I mean, could Gatland do a similar thing with his matchday squad? If you're going to leave someone out and you're going to make a really hard decision, do you just have to leave them out altogether?
Would Sergio Ramos have scored a penalty? I think he would.
Possibly. It's brutal. It's got to be a brutal decision this week when it inevitably comes. But that is Conor Murray.
We went from having like 6 starters in our team last week to like, are we going to have? Well, we have Tyke Furlong anyway. And then after that, it's like, do we have anybody else who's guaranteed to start at this point? Probably not.
You'd like to think Henshaw,
but not fully fit. I mean, he played a bit at the weekend and was quiet, but you know, he's just coming back from a hamstring injury. So was that all they needed? But after that.
Like after that, it's a bit of a lottery then when it comes to the second and back row, and just like
all of a sudden, Beard takes Henderson's place at 6 and 7. Tyke Burns' versatility gets him on the bench, but maybe not, because Courtney Laws can do that too, and it looks like Courtney Laws isn't going to be in the team. And then after that, you're like, well, Jack Conan's not going to get in ahead of Toby Faletau because Wales. And then after that, if Conor Murray's not in the team, we don't have one of the 10s. We're not even in the conversation for that. We know that.
Do you know what's going to happen is if you're looking for Irish players, Bundy Aki's going to start.
Well,
I would have him right up there with Ian Henderson as somebody who's as likely to start as him. Now Ian Henderson's not overly likely to start, but like
I think Ian Henderson's just been knocked out by
he has completely
performance.
So you'd have Aki on that level, or maybe even just a little bit above him. But I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever to see him start.
There's a possibility there's one Irishman in the team, and I don't know. I mean, you presume he's starting Tyke Furlong, and they've just been managing his game time to make sure that he absolutely starts. But who knows? It's Warren Gatland.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. I think you're being a little bit pessimistic on that. I think maybe two or three.
Okay, give me the over/under. Give me the over/under.
3. I will be going. Well, the 3 is what I think it will be. So how do I work this? Do I go for 2 as the over?
You can go 3.5.
3.5. Yeah, sorry.
Under, you can go
correct.
2.5.
3.5. Let's go.
Well, if you're going 3.5, and if this was real, I mean, I would be taking all your money. I would be taking.
Okay, so sorry, no, 2.5, because I'll be going 3 and I'll be going for the over. So I'll be going for Henshaw. I'll be going for Byrne, I'll be going for Furlong. Maybe if you go 3.5, you could say Aki as well. But no, let's go 2.5 as the over/under. Okay,
I'm a seller at 2.5. I just am concerned about the fitness. I think because there's 3 tests, I think that if they're in any way worried about Henshaw, that they hold him for one more week. You know, you might stick him on the bench. This is the starting 15. I think that like I'd be delighted if there's more than 2 at the moment.
I think that would be a decent outcome, I think, maybe when we were previewing the Lions tour, but I think that's a disappointing outcome after the first couple of warm-up games.
Yeah, because they played really well.
Yeah, and haven't really done necessarily anything, haven't done much wrong.
Right.
Yeah, but that's the Lions. That's Conor Murray losing the captaincy, potentially losing his place as well.
Yeah, and as you said, not a reflection on anything Murray's done, just the fact that there's been a massive concerted campaign by all of our colleagues in the rugby media from Wales and Scotland and England to get a new scrum half, because they don't like our scrum half. That's how this works, right?
That's exactly it.
Every Monday morning on OTBAM, we give you the chance to win a Gillette starter pack. All you got to do is to be in the draw is tell us who you think should be on the performance rankings, either in red or in amber or in green. We want to hear the good, the bad and the grand from the weekend sport. You can comment below, tweet us or DM us on Instagram, and the winner will be announced before 9:30. So also in the red, despite a victory this weekend, this is clearly bias on your part. What's going on? It's the Dubs.
Let's be fair, it's just easier to find people in the green and it's harder to put people in the red. The Dubs probably were closer to amber than anything else. But still, it wasn't a great day for Dublin yesterday. I don't think you can necessarily claim that. It's great for a couple of those players to finally have an actual war with Meath. Dublin and Meath players tearing the jerseys off each other, a couple of scuffles here and there. That's what you want to see in Dublin Meath games. It's something that's been absent from our sporting calendar for over a decade at this point, and for a lot of these Dublin players, it's something that's been absent from their entire sporting career at senior level. So at least that's back to some level. I will say on the Meath front, while I am a big advocate of the idea that you need to get within a few points of Dublin before you can actually beat them, I am concerned at some point in the next season or 2 seasons that Dublin are going to get better again, that they're possibly in a period of transition, and that just because they're worse than they were last year doesn't mean that they're going to be worse next year than they are this year. That there is still an element of maybe...
Really?
I'm by no means guaranteeing that Dublin are going to get worse again next year.
Where is the improvement going to come from these players? Who is still cresting to the peak of their career? Who is still to get even better than they are now in concert with other players?
I just think that the volume of players that they've lost this year won't be matched next year, and who out of the mature players in that squad, with the exception maybe of Philly McMahon and Kevin McManaman, if we were to believe that he's still around, are likely to retire anytime soon. I still think that they're all going to be around next year. Sure, maybe none of them are cresting to a peak, but there is still a generational player there like Brian Scully and Niall Scully and Brian Howard, and maybe if Merchant's back in next season, where you're like, these guys can actually take a step up and be the leaders in the team. Of course, you've got the likes of James McCarthy, who may see diminishing returns at some point. But I just don't think...
Let me go through, because Michael Fitzsimons is in that group.
Yeah, true.
So you talked about Philly. Johnny Cooper could go. After that, in fairness, you'd be surprised if any of the rest, like Dean Roxon, has a number of years left where he can be one of the best footballers and metronomically reliable, kicking frees, which unfortunately we didn't have somebody to do that, and that's a huge issue at this stage of the championship. You kind of need a 90% outcome from free taking wherever it is on the field if you're going to be competitive against the 6-time All-Ireland champions who are going for 7 in a row. I think that there could be 4 or 5 who go from the panel to next year. So if you consider that, like, there's some talk that Cluxon isn't gone, I kind of don't believe that at the moment, right? You'd still have 5 or 6 gone potentially next year.
And I think that if they end up getting dethroned this year, I'm not sure that necessarily be the worst thing for some of these younger players who actually are coming into the fold and are trying to establish themselves in the greatest team of all time. I think that there's a coterie of players there who can only get better with the experience of being thrown into the deep end at the moment. There may be a case that they're just not up to the standard that some of the previous Dubs were, and that's obviously a problem. But I would think that Dublin are going to get out of their slumber at some point. Maybe in the next couple of years is too short term on my part. Maybe it's a bit longer than that. I still think, though, if we fast forward 12 months and Dublin play Meath once again, kind of think the pressure's on Meath to beat them. I think it's that close now. I think that, yes, yesterday was a really good moment for Meath football and not a good moment for Dublin in the context of the last decade. I still think their next meeting, Meath maybe need to win or do something that was a level above yesterday. The free taking was an issue yesterday. I think they can rightly bemoan not getting a penalty in the first half. I think that was a really poor decision from the referee, especially given the fact that Dublin get a penalty up the other end. Was it in the same play? Was it a couple of moments later? I think they can feel hard done by on that front. I think at the time maybe it didn't seem like that big a decision because, as we've already said, at half-time it looked like Dublin were back and Dublin were going to increase their lead in the second half. But looking back in the game, I think that was a pretty big moment. Something is happening with Dublin at the moment, though, at strange times. OK, a couple of things, right? What are we overreacting to the fact that a team 11 points up on the hottest day in history in Irish sport, who are already through to the next round in a straight knockout championship and who have had some injury problems, ease off the gas in the third quarter? Are we? What are you saying here? Are you saying
we massively overrating that?
But are you like just trying to ask that question just to be a devil's advocate here, or do you actually think the heat was a factor? Did it the heat that the opposition of Dublin were also playing in yesterday? Like,
Did you miss my point? My point was, did they not just take their foot off the gas because it was hot and the game was over?
but what the relevance of the game of the day being hot is a completely
Okay, so you missed my point. They took their foot off the gas for a bunch of different reasons to conserve energy for the rest of the season. Because it was an opponent who was it 60 points they've beaten them in the last 4 games or 5 games combined, whatever the stat was in the middle, thrown out in the middle commentary. Like, my difficulty here with going, oh, Dublin had a bad game against Wexford away from home, first round of the championship. Dublin had a bad third quarter, right? And that's all it was, is a 15-minute period against Meath in this, and we're like, oh, that's it. Oh, we're gonna get them now. But it's actually, hang on a second.
I don't think
in the first half, when the game needed to be won, the Dubs went and blitzed Meath, and it was game over, right? So Meath got it back to 3 points, but for their complete inability to kick frees and score goals when there were chances for them, maybe they could have got back in the game. But when it looked like that, Dublin played keep ball, knocked over a few scores, and just took the sting out of it. Are we not overreacting?
But you're misinterpreting what I'm saying here. I'm not sitting here this morning saying Dublin are going to get beaten in this year's championship. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever. I'm saying that it was a bad performance from them yesterday, and it was unbecoming of a team that had been ruthless in those sort of games. I'm still not sure Dublin are going to get beaten, is the thing. I still think you need to have a 4 or 5 point lead against Dublin to actually win a game against them at the moment, because we saw how well they kept the ball at the end of the game yesterday. But it's just strange that Dublin would take the foot off the pedal. If that was genuinely their attitude yesterday, that they needed to conserve energy for Kildare.
But not for Kildare. They're not, it's not. It's the rest of the season, and it's not like they don't make the decision. Right, game's over. Everybody, like, go 40% from this for the rest of the game. Jesus, hot outside. It's not. It's like I'm not saying that the team announced at half-time, right, this game is over, let's conserve energy. But it automatically happens.
Why hasn't it happened in the last 6 years? In any game?
I think it has happened in games before where they could have blitzed teams by 20 points, but they only beat them by 8 or 9. I think it happened in...
That's only happened a handful of times, though.
I think it happened against Tyrone when they beat them in the end by 5 or 6 points in the All-Ireland final, and they could have killed them. I think it happened in a load of those games.
What was the next game after Tyrone? What were they conserving their energy for after Tyrone? Like, I mean, that's the All-Ireland final.
The point was that they don't have a habit of blowing teams out. They actually don't run up the score in most of their games where they don't need to. Where the whole point of, like, keeping the ball for 4 minutes is to kill the clock but also conserve energy, so the opposition is expanding more energy than you are. I don't know.
I'm not really, just to kind of like just to challenge that a little bit. So last year, you're saying they don't run the score up. You're saying that's something they don't do. Last year they beat Meath by 21 points. They beat Laois by 22 points. They beat Cavan by 15 points. The previous year they beat Meath by 16 points, Kildare by 15 points, Louth by 26 points. In what world is 26 points not running up a score?
Okay, and how did they do when they were...
Previous year, 23 points against Wicklow. How is that not running up the score?
Well,
19 against
Wicklow
Longford.
are useless, though. Like,
this is the Leinster Championship. This is all the one. Laois 18 points in 2018.
Okay,
31 points versus Westmeath in 2017.
Give me the games against anybody outside of Leinster.
But this is the Leinster Championship. Why are you suddenly shifting the goalposts?
Because
there's
3 games.
The Leinster Championship.
Because there are 4 games. There are 4 games from the All Ireland, and at half time they're 11 points up. I don't know. Let Anthony Moyles is coming along later on. If there's a more rational explanation for it, like if you listen to Andy McEntee talking with Tommy after the match, I think that audio is out there on our Twitter channel. Andy talks about pride. I'd like to think that they have some pride. They're 11 points down. Like that, for me, that's what happened, right? I don't think that there's... I'm not going to believe yet until they're up against Galway or Mayo in the All-Ireland semi-final and they take a lead and they don't manage the game at 5 points. I don't know.
Managing the game at 5 points, absolutely. That's why I think I think there's every chance they'll still win the All-Ireland and go 7 in a row, because they can manage the game, and there is so much quality in that forward line where you can find yourself coming up against a Dublin team that don't seem spectacular and can still be 60 minutes deep into a game and have a 5 point lead, and at that point it is game over. There is no getting it back from that. And I'm still just not sure that any team left in the championship has the correct mentality to be able to get into a position where they have that lead over Dublin, and they're the ones who are holding on to that lead.
Carey do.
It's the only way they're going to be able to win. But when have they proven it, though? When have they proven it against Dublin? Like, they had that lead in 2019, and it was a smaller lead and they crumbled. Now they need to go one step further and have a bigger lead, I feel, because they won't claw it back from behind. The thing is, we just don't know until somebody actually does it.
Tyrone probably have a team to do it now that they're getting their team fully fit and they're coming off the back of the victory at the weekend, right?
Possibly. I think that next year it'll be very interesting for Tyrone. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would have predicted Donegal to win that game yesterday, and of course Michael Murphy getting sent off is a huge moment for if you lose your best player in those sort of circumstances. Of course it's going to be massive for you. So I think Tyrone got to rub of the green a little bit, but they had to take advantage of the opportunity. And I think as well they were also down to 14 men for the last 10 minutes of the game and kicked on when it really mattered at the end, and they deserve huge credit for that. And I mean, McKenna and McShane coming off the bench yesterday, their stars are aligning at just the right time, so they'll definitely be a factor. I'd like to see it happen. I'd like to see this Tyrone team get a crack at Dublin, and I think over the next couple of years they'll be a real factor. I think Mayo-Dublin, if that is the All-Ireland semi-final we do get, I think that's a game worth watching. Because if I were to ask you what was the winning margin in the All-Ireland final last year, I'm not sure, certainly I thought it was about 10 or 11.
8?
It was 5.
Right.
They only beat Mayo by 5 points in the end last year, which...
So they don't run up the scores against teams?
That, in fairness, they didn't run up the score against Mayo last year when there was an impression that they were well in front.
Yeah. I just think that the team became very economical, and what we saw, I think the conditions played into, okay, today we're going to be economical, we're going to conserve our energy, and Meath got a bit of a run, and I don't know. Let's not overreact to this just yet. They were the opposite of economical. that ping is Tommy Rooney trying to get into the conversation.
But the thing is, we're not overreacting just yet. They're in the red because yesterday I thought was just a poor performance from Dublin, especially in that second half. An overreaction would say they're not going to win the All-Ireland. They're going to be Leinster champions without question. I think Mayo could beat them, but I don't think they will beat them, and I think they'll be in the All-Ireland final. And then it comes down to who are you back? And I've said this before: who are you backing if the scores are level with 10 minutes to go? You're still backing Dublin, so they're still favourites on merit for the All-Ireland Championship. So nobody's overreacting.
Not back Carey or Tyrone just yet, but okay. Very quickly, it's happened before, but they've never utterly lost control and been turned over as many times as they were, or kicking wides like that in a Leinster game. They might not run up the score, but they'll keep the ball. They couldn't do that for 20 minutes at the start of the second half. The only time they did it well was for 3 minutes at the start of the fourth quarter, led to a wide, and 4 minutes in the 68th minute when it was a 3-point game and Fenton points. Right, let's move on, because we'll come back to this a little bit later on, and all summer until they eventually get beaten. Are they going to get beaten this summer, yes or no?
Yes.
You've changed. The power rankings need fixed. Next.
Irish golf is in amber, which is extremely harsh on Irish golf because, let's face it, it was a brilliant week for Seamus Power, getting his first win on the PGA Tour. A life-changing moment, really, for somebody who's been plugging away for so long. He won after a sudden death playoff last night at the Barbasol Championship. It was JT Poston over a sixth playoff hole, which eventually got him his win. And just a brilliant moment for Seamus Power. Also, Shane Lowry finished brilliantly yesterday, gets himself right up into Ryder Cup contention. We've been talking all year about whether or not Padraig Harrington is going to give Shane Lowry the wild card or not when it comes to the Ryder Cup. Turns out that if Shane Lowry keeps going the way he's going, he may not even need the wild card. What has kind of changed the weekend then is some interesting comments from Rory McIlroy yesterday with regards to the Olympics. He says that he's not a patriotic guy. I'm just going to get the quotes up here. I'm not sure if you have them. Oh yeah, sorry. So he's talking about the Olympics. I'm not a very patriotic guy. I'm doing it because I think it is the right thing to do, actually appearing at the Olympics. I missed it last time. And for golf to be an Olympic sport, you need your best players there. And I feel I want to represent the game of golf more than anything else. So Rory McIlroy, golf guy, rather than Irish guy.
As you would anticipate, the mentions when we published the story yesterday were pretty much hellfire and brimstone. People suggesting that unless he bleeds green, white and orange when we cut him, he shouldn't represent Ireland in the Olympics. I've got to say, I think that people being slightly ambivalent about the whole notion of nationhood is a pretty interesting a moment for us, and we should have a conversation about this as opposed to going, "Oh, get him off! Get somebody else in!" I mean, it's a fairly complicated relationship that people born in the six counties have with the Republic, which is essentially the team. I realise golf is a 32 county thing, but actually, you know, the flag that they play under, the flag that we raise if he wins a gold medal, is the flag of the Republic of Ireland. So it's just, I think this is interesting. I'm certainly not going to criticise him for it. I'm going to listen to what people have to say about it, as opposed to, get him off that team! Get him off that team!
I think those people should just cool the jets a little bit and, first of all, let him play the tournament, let him win gold for Ireland, and then kick him off the team, because that way you can get your gold medal for your country. And here, Aaron Levine, Blair out in Tokyo, and everybody's a winner at the end of the day. So that's Irish golf. Ulster football in the green, naturally, just an outstanding weekend. Really, the statistics, 775 across both semi-finals, which, as you can imagine, is a record for an Ulster football set of semi-finals. Monaghan versus Armagh tied the record of 56 cumulative points in an Ulster match. Cavan versus Tyrone in 2016 was the other one. So it's interesting that it's 2021 is the record for the semis, and then 2016 and 2021 are holding the single game record. Basically, modern football is at its best. The modern football is the best version of football we've ever had, and it's there for a number of reasons. Obviously, the championship has rightly taken a hammering over recent years for a number of reasons, whether it's championship structures, whether it's knowing the destination of Sam Maguire before a ball is ever kicked. But in the background, there has been a Trojan effort on the part of a lot of these Division 1 teams / top-tier Division 2 teams to bring the standards up to a level that we just simply haven't seen before. And in the Ulster Championship at the weekend, in those perfect conditions, it was just there for all to see. It was absolutely sensational stuff. This sort of idea that managers were kind of a little bit out of control. I think Oisin McConville's making that point in the Examiner this morning, that McGeaney and McEnany on Saturday kind of tried to tell their team what to do, but they were powerless to stop the drama that was unfolding. No matter what system they tried to put on play, it just couldn't stop one of the great all-time Ulster games from breaking out. And then yesterday was just sort of filled with tension. The Michael Murphy incidents kind of taking it to a whole new level of intrigue and an unpredictability about the whole thing, which is really, really important, which is something we've been missing in football. But one thing that hasn't been going the wrong way in football over the last little while is the standard. The standard has always been going up and up and up. The problem was the predictability. Now the unpredictability is coming back and the standards are still rising, and it's just this beautiful marriage, and it was a great weekend in Ulster.
Yeah, the one thing you would say is that those 4 teams are definitely on the first page of your power rankings after the weekend. That the quality of football they had, the strength and depth, the ambition of what they're trying to do with the ball in possession is a massive quantum leap forward for Ulster football, but for football in general. And now 2 of them are gone. It's really unfortunate that that's actually happening this year, because I'd love to see what Armagh would do through the back door, and I'd love to see what Donegal would do if Sir Murphy, after a black card, there would be no suspension if he was fit to play, and where Donegal could go, because you kind of think that any of those 4 teams would be able to knock off, or certainly give Mayo and Galway a really good game. And again, look, I don't mean to bring this back to a structures conversation, but it will be great when we can watch these teams week in, week out, and every single match matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we are getting to the stage now at the Championship where you feel less and less sympathy for the teams crashing out, which is great, because you don't have to feel that guilt that Donegal have been screwed over time and time again. But like, when we have a conversation about a team like Donegal, I do think it is there is a huge caveat there that they've been in a really tough province, and Joe Brody really had a pop off them yesterday in the paper, like not calling them a not serious team, and which may be a little bit harsh. Obviously, it's been 7 years since they've got to an All-Ireland semi-final, and they also got to the final that year, obviously, and that's not a good return on the group of players that they have. But if you copied and pasted them into any of the other 3 provinces, they almost certainly would have made it to the provincial. They would have made it out of their province and into the semi-finals, no question about it. So it'll be great. It'll be great for those counties to actually put a stop to this over the next couple of years if that proposal B is brought through.
Well, but ironically, they could be one of the ones voting against it.
Is that right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, certainly it wasn't Jim McGuinness saying,
"Oh yeah,
provincial. That's very important. Tradition's really important. It'll undermine what we did."
Just to put, like, I mean, I've seen McKenna Cup finals contested in a fiery fashion. We can still have that. We can still have those provincial derbies, which are brilliant. And I think that Donegal would probably take playing a Roscommon or a Meath rather than having to play Tyrone as many times as they've had to play Tyrone in recent years. No disrespect to Roscommon or Meath. That is Ulster football. You
were slightly disrespectful to them, but let's move on. Number 1.
I don't know why it came to my head. Number 1, it can only be Limerick Hurling. I haven't seen a performance as brutal as this since, in Gaelic games, since Dublin swatted Mayo aside in that third quarter in 2019. It was right on that level, possibly a level above, and I'm not sure many people actually really saw it coming at halftime. Yes, this is one of the great teams in modern hurling, but sometimes great teams have really bad days and it takes them weeks, sometimes months, to figure out what exactly went wrong. Something clicked at halftime here. They managed to shift the entire view on this game at halftime, and it got to the stage in the second half where Tipperary were lucky they didn't get hammered. This was extraordinary from Limerick yesterday.
It really was, right? It really was. It did feel like the referee didn't send off Aaron Gillan because it was going to ruin the game, because Tip would have just killed them at that stage. It was like, look, you're so far behind, I'm going to let you away with this fairly clear swipe on Carl Barrett. At that stage, I was like, that's a great decision by the referee. Real common sense, because it means that this game is going to be pretty interesting. I did not anticipate that Limerick were about to just kill them and swat them aside. And in retrospect, maybe he should have applied the letter of the law. And today, this morning, Tipperary with the winners of the game. I don't know what would have happened if Gillan wasn't there, because obviously, like, it's mad that Limerick made that mistake from the start of not picking him. So the analysis of the game is obviously going to be focused on what an incredible comeback and like the absolute topsy-turvy nature of the match. But at the same time, like, kind of important, kind of a big decision, big deal. Yeah. Clear as day, like. And I don't know, you could make the case that he was trying to get him away and it would have been very harsh, and everybody would have given out about the red card if they'd given it, because like, sure, look, the game was essentially over at that point, even though it clearly wasn't. So I don't know.
It was a red card, and Gillan was extremely lucky to still be on the pitch, and it's a really bad refereeing decision made worse by the fact that it was decisive in the end. Limerick having an extra man, it's what, like, 14 Limerick men is fearsome enough, the form they're in at the moment, and it might still have been a comeback, but 15 just ensured the comeback was going to happen. Like, it was a terrible decision, and the hurling referees in the spotlight once again after that weekend. But it is incredible how the narrative just completely shifts, where before the game, or during the first half I should say, John Kiley was going to be open to some criticism about why are you not starting Aaron Gillan, what was the decision behind that, to at full time being like, he's got it right again, it's a genius halftime talk. And the same goes for Tip, like Liam Sheedy, again getting huge amounts of credit for what his team did in the first half. Like a lot of hallmarks of that performance against Waterford a few years back, where they just crushed them in the opening half. And now it feels that the questions around Sheedy are probably exist now about like, where are Tipperary actually going and where do they go from here, and all those cliched questions. It's amazing how even with a safety net of a back door, yesterday seemed really decisive for both of those counties.
Yeah, I think in the cold light of day during the week when the game gets analysed, it'll be very interesting to see what and how well everybody talks about the two management teams and what they think happened. And look, maybe hurling is just a game of chaos, and Limerick have a bit more about them at the moment in those games of chaos to be able to win matches. And as a result, the 12-point lead, very dangerous lead, turns out, in hurling. 12 points, not guaranteed. Get to 15 and then come back to me. Right, who didn't make it?
Well, I just want to mention Irish Athletics, because they didn't make it. And again, it's one of these weekends where it's really, really hard to fit everything in. As you mentioned, the Formula 1 could have made it as well, and a couple of other things. But the Irish Athletics team at the under-20s in Tallinn, just an incredible couple of days for them. Rashida Adeleke, we can start with. I mean, this is just incredible, really. If you can get onto social media and look at her performances in the 100 metres and 200 metres final, the 200 metres final is definitely up there. Like, dominant performances like Usain Bolt in Beijing and in London, like that sort of distance between her and the rest of the pack. This is one of our greatest up-and-coming athletes in the country right now. She is absolutely incredible. Just the 100 metres on Friday was in 11:34. And then she ran 22.92 into 200 metres by a street on Saturday. This is from Cathal Dennehy's report. She's 18 years of age. This is the under-20s. Let's not forget. Adeleke is not going to Tokyo. She was left out of the mixed 4x400 due to her lack of 400-metre races in an outdoor setting. Now, this is despite the fact that she had a split of a 50.96 at the NCAA Championships in June, which is a full second faster, almost a full second faster than any other Irish athlete this year. So she had the form, she just didn't have the outdoor form. And looking at Twitter, Cathal Dennehy, who of course was over this all week, was saying no discredit to anyone who was picked, but how in God's name was Adeleke not selected for the Irish Olympic mixed relay squad? And Sonia O'Sullivan replied saying, this will be looked back upon as one of the worst decisions ever made by Irish athletics. Clearly one of the current best Irish athletes, an outlier where exceptions should be made and brave decisions taken, will always be looked back upon as one of those what-if decisions. So clearly people know what they're talking about. Also confused by why this decision was made, because you suspect that the Tokyo experience would have been amazing for her development. It wasn't just her though. You had Diarmuid O'Connor from Bandon. He set an Irish under-20 decathlon record, 7,604 points. He finished 4th, personal best in 8 out of the 10 events. And then a couple of other guys to mention. Keane McPhillips, who of course is a mainstay of the performance rankings. Every time he performs, he seems to make our performance rankings. The Longford man ran in the 1500 metre final and ended up winning gold. So he's had medals filled 2021 so far. And then there's Nick Griggs, who is 16 years of age. He's from Tyrone. He only took up the sport last year. He ran into 3,000 metres, and he's had a tragic year. His older brother Joshua died after a workplace accident in June, but he got over the line in the men's 3,000 metres on Saturday, the youngest in the field by more than a year, and won it. So, it's incredible performance where you're looking at Nicholas Griggs, Keane McPhillips and Rashida Adeleke pictured there, all with gold medals, all winners, all at the top of their field, and a lot of them well underage in comparison to some of their fellow competitors at the European Under-20. So an incredible weekend for them.
All right, that is this week's performance rankings.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
We will announce the competition winner before 9:30 this morning. If you want to be in the draw to win a Gillette starter pack, just tell us who you think should be in the performance rankings and where they should be, the good, the bad and the grand. So red, amber or green. We are going to talk Gaelic football with Anthony Moyles. There's Lions with Alan Quinlan after 9. We're back after these talking hurling and camogie with Anne Downey and Ciaran Carey. Stay tuned.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
To me, you need your best line-out caller. So if I was picking a team, I would 100% have Ian Henderson. I think he's the best line-out caller there.
At times it's becoming farcical, and you have to really feel for these players and management. This isn't normal in any shape or form. This is not a Lions tour as we know it.
I don't agree with it. I think it's a wrong decision. It's harsh on Johnny Sexton. Another kick in the teeth.
For the best Lions coverage this summer, subscribe to the OTB Rugby podcast stream on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
When you're watching it on telly, the cameras are unbelievable now. So you see every sort of an angle, you see it in slow motion, you get to watch it like you hear the guys in the Sunday game. We watched that clip back 10 times, 20 times. A referee can't do that. I thought Paul Dwyer was doing a fantastic job. Like, there was so many scores from play alone. You'll have the stats on that later on, but it was an incredible match to watch as a neutral. Like, even I suppose the Limerick supporters, they felt they should have got a few frees. They weren't happy in the first half. Tipperary won't be happy, I suppose. If he did slap, I suppose it is a sending off. But did the referee see it? Did Pod see it? He wouldn't have had it. If he had to saw that, I'm sure he would have gave the red card. And it looked from up there in the stand, we're, probably 60 or 70 yards away. It looked like, he was trying to shove him away as opposed to going to slap him. The television, so that's us looking at it live. So I'm putting myself in the referee's situation as well. He didn't see it. If it was a slap, right, it was a sending off. But if the referee didn't see it, or the linesman, what can he do about it? He can't just make it up on the day. So listen, we'll see. And these things happen. Like, I thought Tipperary got a few decisions in the first half, maybe that probably, another day would against them. over the course of a game, they tend to balance themselves out. But listen, I don't like to see anybody getting sent off anyway. So
that's that. At the end there, we got to one of the truths about about Tommy. But in fairness, it's a very good point. The speed of the game and the speed of the incident that the referee watched with the Gillan situation, not getting a red card for that. So that's Tommy Walsh there. We'll hear more from Tommy Walsh at around about 9:30 this morning. But I'm delighted to say Anne Downey and Ciaran Carey are with us. We'll start with you, Anne. Good morning to you. How are you getting on?
I'm great. Thanks very much. And yourselves?
Yeah, so, I mean, look, that was definitely one of the best hurling matches that I think, as Munster finals, it's an instant classic. And I think it's one of those games that will be talked about for years and years to come. But it felt like we were watching two brilliant teams playing at the absolute peak of their powers. Particularly in the first half, Tipperary were absolutely sensational, and in the second half, Limerick were as good as they've been. So how do you draw lessons from that, and what do you make of where both teams are now?
Oh, look, I'm still exhausted after watching the game. I mean, for the first 17 minutes, the first water break, it just went so quickly. The game was end-to-end stuff. I suppose you'd be watching games before and you'd be looking at the watch and this is nearly coming up to a water break, and the next thing we were on 17 minutes, and it was unbelievable the way that Tipperary were playing. And as Henry said, all they have to do is tip over 10 pints and they're home and dry. The 226 is going to win any game, and they ended up only scoring 220 or 321. But I suppose, the heat, you'd have to take off your hat to every team that went out over the weekend in the conditions and to produce such a game, especially, with Limerick playing so badly in the first half, and to come out and give that sort of performance. They're tackling, they're hunting, they were still full of running at the end of the game. Unbelievable. And anyone that was lucky enough to be at the game to see that live, it was a special place to be. Kyle Hayes' goal, will we ever see the like of it again? He was after doing the same, I suppose, the last day, scored more or less. He's making a habit of it. That's his second goal, I suppose, in 2 matches. But yesterday, to come from deep in his own defence and run the length of the field and put the ball in the back of the net the way he did, it's, it'll never be matched and hasn't been matched. And I think even all our greats in Kilkenny that have gone before us, I don't know, have they scored a goal like it.
The fact that all the goals that we're seeing scored at the moment, and even one of the goals of the weekend was a tap in after a shot from quite far out, kind of makes the decision about that the referee made. This is a goal scoring opportunity. It's basically a goal scoring opportunity in hurling at the moment, anywhere inside the 45. Players are so good, is my point.
And are you speaking about the opportunity with
a couple of weeks ago? Yeah. The controversial red card. It's like, well, actually, you know what? Look, in fairness,
look, we could. I don't think you can revisit that scenario. I think the whole country knows, a yellow card. But I didn't really think it was a penalty, to be quite honest. Aidan McCarthy, he's a brilliant player. I thought Clare were very hard done by on the day, to be honest. Wouldn't you say the same thing that happened, with Rory when he was brought down for the Wexford, and they're all saying that the hurl went back up to his face and it ran up along his own hurl, but it was a goal scoring opportunity as well, and the same with the Clare full forward. So there's things and roundabouts on it. I mean, that day against Clare and Tip, I just felt that Aidan McCarthy just overcommitted himself, and his run kind of, I know he took the legs from under the chap, but yellow card, but not a penalty for me anyway.
You were watching this game on the Limerick Tip game. Am I right in saying the Kyle Hayes goal comes after the water break? Just after the water break, was that? So the water break was supposed to come at the time to give Tipperary the opportunity for a breather, and then Kyle Hayes did that straight away. Sorry,
I don't know.
So the water break it was just after the water break, wasn't it?
I thought so. Yeah, I thought the water break.
Yeah.
And even with that couldn't stop Limerick's momentum.
No, I think, again, I was looking at Liam Sheedy on the line at half time, and I think that sort of raw emotion that he was showing is best kept for the dressing room. You know, if I was a player playing against Tipperary yesterday and I saw that when I was going in at half time, you know, I was saying to myself, well, you know, this is not going to happen for the second time. You know, I know Liam is full of emotion on the line, and you know, he plays every ball with the lads, but Limerick just came out a different machine in the second half. They were just so up for the game. They probably knew in their heart and soul that they were after giving too much space, especially to Jason Ford. I mean, Jason has scored, I think, 11 points, and 9 of those were from play. How did that happen, you know, against a great Limerick team? How was he allowed that freedom, you know, to do that? And he was bossing the play, and Bubbles at that stage, you know, he was after missing 3 points. I know he scored 1-2 before half time, but at the same time he was missing vital scores, and Tipperary could have been so much farther ahead. And you know, it just showed the real character of this Limerick team. You know, they never panic. They're well able to find one another. The tackles that they put in the second half, they tackled, you know, if a Tipperary player had the ball, there was 2 or 3 Limerick guys on him, not letting them get their shot in, you know, hounding them down. And it was, I think, 14 or 15 minutes into the second half before Tipperary scored their first point. And even at that, Jason Ford's first shot on goal in the second half, he drove it wide. So there was the pressure already. They knew, Tipperary knew that Limerick weren't going to die down, and it took them so long, you know, to get their opening score in the second half. Just a measure of the work that Limerick, you know, were going through. And of course, Ciaran Lynch in the centre of the field, you know, he just throws caution to the wind. He looks for the ball, and he's not a bit selfish, throwing it off to the best lad in the position. And it's all about the team. And, you know, I just love the energy that he brings to a team. And just unreal game in the second half, especially. Well, for Limerick's point of view, but I haven't said that, you know, I enjoyed the way that Tipperary attacked as well. And they were all talk about maybe that some of the guys were a little bit over the hill. Certainly in the first half, it didn't show that. Having said that, I suppose Shamey Quinlan did have one of his quieter days. Maybe didn't get an awful lot of the ball into the full forward line, but there's definitely more in Shamey.
Ciaran Carey's with us now. Good morning to you, Ciaran.
Good morning, how are you?
Good. You must be delighted with that. What a performance from Limerick.
Yeah, without a doubt. I suppose it's one of those special months of finals, really. And you could sense in the first quarter this was a proper provincial final, tit for tat, score for score. A few wides from both sides, and you know, as the game manifests itself, then you know, it was super there to be super to witness it. Number one, and you know, number two, I suppose Limerick found themselves position yesterday that they never used themselves. So it's a huge act. And I was, we were chatting and said, you know, we're still a chance to put Tipperary in the back foot from the result in the second half.
Just having a few small issues with your line there, Ciaran. Will give you another buzz there. And I, like you mentioned there, that Limerick didn't really panic yesterday. I guess in one way there was kind of a serenity about how they performed in the second half, but there was also this manic aggression about them. Is there a slight difference there when you're coaching a team to try and keep them calm, to ensure that they don't panic, but to also kind of G them up, to also ensure that they come out and show something in the second half?
Well, you know, you have to have the killer instinct, to be quite honest, you know, and you have to be ruthless, and you have to do whatever it takes to win. It's as simple as that. And, you know, I suppose you could see Seamus Flanagan and Keane and the chest pumping, you know, at one stage after they got a great score. And, you know, you just have to, you know, you leave everything on the pitch. There was no point in Limerick going into the dressing room and feeling sorry for themselves at half time, being 10 points down, you know, and they decided, look, let's have a go at it. And that's what they certainly did. And I would imagine it is probably the first time in a long time that they have found themselves in that position. And we were all speaking about the 30-something goals that they were, or points that they were scoring every match and winning games. But, you know, they proved yesterday too that they're well able to take their scores. And of course Flanagan is a huge man on the edge of the square, you know, and full of running as well for a big chap and well able to take his points. But, you know, he every time he has the ball, he's looking for a goal, and that's it. You know, it's a hard job for anyone to try and keep tabs on him. But overall, you know, I just thought, Garrod Hegarty in the first half, to me, you know, I said to Angela here, you know, Garrod looks, I won't say disinterested, but just didn't, I suppose, know or wasn't able to get up to the pitch of the game. But by God, did he get up to the pitch of the game in the second half. He put in, a ferocious performance. And that was maybe testament to the way that Tipperary were working in the first half. You know, Tip were doing to Limerick what Limerick usually do to every team. But as I said, the heat, you know, fair play and hats off to all of them that took the field at the weekend, you know, to be able to, to stay going for the 70 minutes and more, you know. And I suppose at the end of the day, really that's what told, you know, Limerick had the strength and the conditioning and the fitness maybe, and a little bit of the youth to sustain that heat that was in it yesterday. Certainly, I thought that Liam might have introduced some of the young players from the Tipperary team earlier. They came on, young Keown came on, got a great goal, but he wasn't on long enough to make any real impact. The same with O'Connor. So, you know, I think Tip will learn from it, you know, maybe do what Kilkenny are doing, you know, start the younger lads and let them put in a few of the hard knocks for the first half an hour, and then introduce, you know, the great ball players and forwards that they have, you know. But it's certainly, you know, again, Liam will learn a lot from the defeat. He won't be happy, you know, the manner that they lost, having been up so many points at 10 points at half time and taking so long to score their next point in the second half. He'll be disappointed with that, but you know, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from it.
Ciaran, I know you're back with us there. Last year you were on with us describing Limerick potentially as the Dublin of hurling. Very Dublin-esque, the brutality in that second half.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I suppose before there was any ball thrown in, I turned around and I said to my friend of mine, I said, Limerick are already up, or Tipper up 1-0 tactically, and he said to me, how do you mean by that? And I was just watching the warm-up, you know, and any time they got any chance at all, they were over in the shadow underneath the far stand, and even for on the V. And so, you know, that could, you know, they sent out a huge message there that they were fully tuned in. And I suppose, you know, the Munster final 2 years ago and last year, Limerick, I suppose, you know, gave Tipperary a bit of a hiding, and it was obvious. They were going to throw the kitchen sink at them yesterday, the first quarter, the second quarter. I just felt, you know, probably our defence didn't get the protection that they usually get in the half-forward line and midfield. And, you know, a lot of games are won and lost at half-time. And, you know, they obviously looked at that. And Limerick came out a totally different team altogether. Came out like a team possessed. And, you know, man for man, every one of them did their job in the second half. And I suppose, you know, Keane Lynch was the one player, I suppose, when they were under pressure, that he was kind of keeping them in the game. Anytime he was on the ball, there was a free, or else he was creating a score. And I suppose if you look at Kyle Hayes and Keane Lynch yesterday, you know, there's certain coaches that you can coach to certain players. But Kyle Hayes' goal yesterday was an actual instinct. And, you know, Keane Lynch, anytime he's on the ball, you know, if there's 3 or 4 around him, his vision gets better. So the more he's under pressure, the better he gets. But overall, yesterday, the second half performance was, you know, outstanding. And as I said earlier on, it's the first time, and, you know, the answer was hugely yesterday with the second half performance.
Would you have any concerns about how slow they were at the start, Ciaran, or do you just put that down to the fact of the history of the occasion, the 3 in a row, Tip better use of the shade? Like, you know, nothing. It was environmental and circumstantial yesterday. It's not something that you would be worried about going forward.
I certainly wouldn't know, but yesterday, you know, when you take all the elements into consideration, you know, I had a good look at Park Peace yesterday. It was like an oversized tennis court. You know, it's nearly AstroTurf hurling down there, and you have the heat on top of that. And as I said, of all the teams in the last 3 or 4 years, the one team that were at the end of a few hidings is Tipperary, and obviously they were going to come at Limerick with everything yesterday. And, you know, especially their 6 forwards, they were running all over the place yesterday, and, you know, probably bamboozled their defence. And, you know, and I suppose a lot come in on the number of jersey that you're wearing, you know, that doesn't even come into the modern game. And I suppose half-time came at the grouped, and, they just went back to the old style hurling the last 3 or 4 years. Small bit of composure, managed every ball, didn't fumble any ball. Barry Nash was outstanding through the whole hour. And, obviously Morrissey and Aaron Gillan, when they both come on, they come on at the right time, just before half-time. They settled out ship, and they met us half-time, and, they come out just a totally different team altogether. Well, the team of old that we know. And from the word go, they put him on the back foot. And even the subs that came on, the minute they got the ball, they took the game to Tipperary. Pat Ryan came on, he left 3 of them behind him. David Reedy came on, did the same, got 2 goal scorers. So, they knew what they were doing. They knew there was a few fellas that in defence for Tipperary, if you run at them, you're going to cause them a bit of hassle. And, tactically, they just nailed it in the second half.
Are there any matchups that would be uncomfortable for this Limerick team of the teams who are left? I guess, who do you not want in an All-Ireland semi-final at this point, Ciaran?
They're halfway too. There was a little bit weeks ago. There's only 4 games to win, jump each fence as it presents itself, and if you do that, you're All-Ireland champions. Outside of winning the Munster Championship, 3 in a row, I suppose nearly every time they go out, they're making their own bit of history, whether it's matches or
We just haven't trouble with that line there, so we'll let that go. Ciaran, Carey, thanks for joining us this morning. And Downey, you're still with us. I did want to chat to you briefly about the situation in the Wexford-Clare game. Again, this was one of those matches where, because it's do or die, there was a whole heap on the line. Clare came absolutely roaring out and essentially built up just enough of a lead to keep Wexford at bay. But you'd have to wonder what would have happened if Wexford had gone at them from the start, and what kind of a game we might have had. So where are Clare now? Are they realistic contenders? Are they a live team who would fancy their chances against anybody at this point?
Yeah, I would imagine that any team left in the hat this morning really want to try and avoid Clare. They seem to be getting better with every game, and that, when you go back to their first league and going up to Antrim and being beaten, and I think really from the league game with Kilkenny, it was a right ding-dong battle, and while Kilkenny at the time didn't really like losing the game, I think their selectors and everything, it gave them the opportunity to reevaluate their situation, and Kilkenny learned a lot from that lesson, and Clare have moved on and pushed on, and Tony Kelly, probably a great, brilliant, absolutely outstanding player, rowing in with every game, would probably won 110, 111, and he did the same at the weekend. But by his standards, he was really quiet, and it was the likes of Aidan McCarthy. I really, I think this young lad is a really fine hurler. David Reedy and Ryan Tyrrell had great games, and of course Diarmuid Ryan at number 5. That day against Kilkenny again from his own half-back line, 2 great points, and he's doing that at every match. They have a brilliant goalkeeper, and you would say, they were Wexford were 9 points down, at the first water break, and maybe it was just, I won't say the whole occasion, but that day in Croke Park, having to go the extra time and trying to get the bodies right in 2 weeks, and just this whole fear maybe of going out of the championship. They really just didn't get motoring for a long time, and when they did, were probably unlucky that they didn't get a draw. And I suppose that's one thing that Brian Lohan would look at, how did we let it slip? Why didn't we just keep putting the ball over the bar? Did we not stay working as hard as we were working? I know Aaron Shanahan on the square was having a torrid time at full forward. He's a ball winner. Was unlucky probably that he didn't get his penalty, and maybe could have got 2 penalties. But I think they're a great side. Wexford will surely be disappointed after a great performance in Croke Park and gone out of the championship now. But certainly Clare, they'll get better, they'll take great confidence, they'll look forward to the next day, they'll recover maybe the turnaround in the heat again. They probably won't be doing an awful lot, I would imagine, this week, but they're looking forward to this draw this morning to see who they're going to pull out of the hat.
Should Davy stay on?
Look, that's really, Davy will know himself. whether he should or not. I can't say that, and it really wouldn't be right for anyone else. It's up to Davy. It's his decision. It shouldn't be anyone else's decision, unless, of course, he sits down with the Wexford County Board and they have a chat, and he'll know in his heart and soul if he can get anything else out of these guys, and really it'll be up to him.
I did want to ask you about the Kilkenny Camogie team. Obviously, always when you're the champions, you're there to be got at, and they did a tough out game at the weekend against Clare, eventually coming through by 6 points, 22 points to 16. I mean, it seems like this championship is full of teams who are at a fairly similar level, so we would expect plenty of close games as the season progresses. How are the Kilkenny team doing at the moment, and are they confident favourites for the rest of the year, do you think?
No, I would say that Brian is just, looking at every game and they never look past the first game, and their focus at the weekend was Clare. Clare had come down to Kilkenny last year and beat them in Nolan Park, so they knew, that if they weren't tuned in, that Clare were going to, really put it up to them. And Chloe Morey, she scored 11 points. And I know a person can't score or beat a team on her own, but Kilkenny, they're motoring well. All the new girls that have come in, Mary O'Connell and is really doing well. Denise, of course, getting her usual 10 points, but I think one of those was only from play, and she's getting better as she gets older. Katie Nolan had a brilliant game in the full forward line. Was unfortunate the referee had called her back when she had the ball stuck in the back of the net, but Kilkenny will be happy to have got over the first hurdle. When you play your first championship game, it's important that you get the win regardless of what has gone before. I know they've won the league and I know they won the All-Ireland last year, but this is a new championship. There's Kilkenny are up there to be knocked, and they know that, and if they don't bring their A game, they're going to be seriously punished. Again, going back to conditions, you would have to say never in my time did we have to play in such heat. And I'm sure it was very tough on all the teams. And to overcome that and, and to get out of Clare to travel to 6 Mile Bridge for a 2 o'clock game, it's an early start. You're in the car, it's 2 hours down and you have to be there earlier than that, so it's an early start for the Kilkenny girls. And Brian will be delighted, to get off with a win and look forward to his game next weekend.
And Downey, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Lovely, thanks, bye.
And Downey giving us some thoughts on the weekend's hurling and camogie as well. If you want to get in touch with us, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. And of course, a reminder, OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. It is time for us to have a look at what's in the papers. We're going to get some thoughts on the football from Anthony Moyles in just a couple of minutes' time. So if we can stick up OTBsports.com, we'll tell you what is... not sure, maybe we don't have it this morning. I'll go through the stories here. Back page of the Irish Independent is Fenton and Kilkenny. McManaman in Japan, but still part of the panel. That's the story from Desi Farrell. So he is in Japan with the Irish boxing team, but he will be part of the panel and will rejoin the panel when he comes back. The line was the importance of work. That's the nature with work commitments. These are amateur players at the end of the day and they're not contracted to play for their county. Working career is really, really important. It has been all along to Dublin football management teams over the last period and continues to remain that way. This was our best display yet, insists Jubilant Kiley. I'm not patriotic. I'm going to Tokyo for a week's golf, says Rory. The front of the Irish Examiner, poking the bear. Hayes and Limerick respond like champions to complete Munster title hat-trick. An interesting point that Ciaran was talking about, they're up against history and it's non-stop that they're making their own history for the first time essentially 80 years since they've done 3 in a row. When shoots were green, 10 years on from Ireland's under-19s Euros Odyssey. Lewis with the Lions, Furlong, Murray best placed for first test start. So the Examiner still thinks that Conor Murray's going to get the nod there. The Telegraph has called Morikawa on the front. Morikawa the Magnificent. Lewis put Max's life in jeopardy. Major controversy in the Formula 1. Lewis Hamilton said he had nothing to apologise for after Christian Horner accused him of putting Max Verstappen's life in jeopardy following their 190-mile-an-hour crash in yesterday's British Grand Prix. I think, like you, Owen, I was not watching this live. It was not one of the many screens that was on, but when Twitter went on fire with what had happened in the opening lap, I think, of the British Grand Prix yesterday, flicked over and saw the analysis, which was essentially that he was incredibly dangerous. And Sky were definitely on the fence when it came to blaming and dishing out blame. I think they gave Lewis Hamilton a 10-second penalty, did they, for his involvement in it? And didn't really stop things. He went on and won the race anyway, so suddenly the championship is open again. The Irish Daily Mail, Glory shines. Limerick pull off historic Munster final comeback. And history man Colin toasts open glory. Electric Nadia is hoping for a real power surge in Tokyo. Morikawa's claret glug. Is that tab of the morning, or are we going to go with something else?
I think that's tab of the morning.
Go for it.
Well, how do you do?
Tab of the morning.
A Monday morning tab. Morning.
Sublime. Kylie reckons it's best he has seen after turnaround. Sublime. See, I don't like the puns where you have to mispronounce the word to make the pun work. Right? That doesn't work.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it would be sublime. I mean, maybe if you're like, that's how you would pronounce it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sublime.
So I really get it. I mean, speak for yourself, not calling that tab of the morning.
Red Bull rage at Lewis's win, that's it. Making haze. Maybe we waited, maybe we peaked too soon, did we?
Maybe we did. I think like it's just getting better and better and better with every back page we're looking at.
Glorikawa. This is the Mirror that we have to give some shout-outs to here. Desi's food for thought after win. This is the Dublin Meath game. We'll talk about that in a moment when Anthony Moyles. The Guardian, their back page is Team GB athletes and staff forced into self-isolation, Olympic chaos. Red Bull fume as Hamilton thrills crowd with glory at Silverstone. Silverstone, absolutely full of people yesterday as the old COVID rages in the UK, so I'm sure they were all wearing masks and so. Oh no, they weren't. McManaman still in blue is this headline in the back of the Herald this morning. Dubs get a right royal fright. Were they frightened, or were they just bored? Bored by what Meath were doing to them, or were they frightened? Morikawa in lofty company after a stunning victory. So his second major title, Morikawa, is very, very good. He's going to be around for a long time. Limerick finds spark to coolly emerge through sweltering heat, and footballers in Olympic Village test positive for COVID-19. So 2 South African footballers have become the first athletes in the village to test positive for COVID-19, raising fears the virus may force a growing number of competitors out of the Tokyo Games when they begin on Friday. It's going to be very interesting to see what type of competition actually survives the ravages of COVID in Tokyo. The Times, their headline, Verstappen fury at Hamilton. Cavendish eyes return to tour, so Mark Cavendish is 36, he'll be 37 next year, and needs one more stage victory to eclipse Eddie Merckx's record, and it looks like he's going to come back next year to try and do it. And it's on the front page of the London Times that it says here, yes, Sir Lewis Hamilton celebrating victory in a controversial British Grand Prix after a 180-mile-an-hour collision ended the race. It was title rival Max Verstappen, but they also have a front page story about how pressure is growing on the FA over the chaos at Wembley. So this story has not disappeared. This newspaper revealed at least 6 breaches of disabled entrance and exit doors and has obtained evidence of 3 more. Also claims of security staff taking thousands of pounds to open emergency exits. Italy fans were assaulted, cocaine was taken in the stadium, and there was violence before, during and after the game. So, yeah, delighted to be in the company of the group who were responsible for that, to try and bid to get the World Cup here. And finally, the Star, Treat Wave, Limerick 229, Tipperary 321, Kylie held goal hero Hayes, and it's Rory pushes golf, not flag in Tokyo. That's the story in that one. And Red Hand, or Red Hot, is the Star's take on Tyrone, who kind of a little bit under the radar in some respects today. But we've got the whole week to big them up. And very quickly, I'm just going to do some of the other stuff from the... I'm just going to need to find it quickly here. If you want to talk amongst yourselves there for a second, Eoin.
Yeah, it's a lovely day outside. The weather is stunning. That is today's update from the OTB AM weather department.
So the Loughnane piece has got pulled out. It's helpfully in the GAA pullout, which we've stupidly pulled out.
It's not?
It is.
Oh, it is, sorry. Oh, you haven't found it yet, no?
No, I haven't found it yet.
No, is it in the pullout? I don't think it is in the pullout, is it? I don't remember pulling out the Loughnane piece when I was reading the Loughnane piece that is...
Well, I can't bloody find it. That's what I'm telling you.
Go from the back. turn the newspaper around and then start.
This is great radio.
Like reading from the back.
Why don't we do that later? We'll do that after.
If you show me the star, I'll be able to find it for you.
No, it's too late. You had your chance and you blew it. Clare versus Cork is the qualifier draw, and it's Waterford against Galway. What do you make of that?
It is a good draw, I want to say, for Clare. I think that Galway are still the team to be avoided from that side of the thing. That side of the draw, I think that even when it comes to that phenomenal performance in Limerick yesterday, there will still be people who say, despite them losing to Dublin, Galway might be the team to take down Limerick because of their physicality. They might be able to stay the trip with them a little bit more. So I think that Clare probably wanted to avoid them as well, and getting Cork like that'll be an absolutely cracking game. I think Galway will take Waterford. I don't think Waterford looked particularly good against Laois at the weekend, nor did Galway, in fairness, in there when they got knocked out of Leinster. So you would imagine it's going to be Galway, and I would say just about Clare from the other side of the draw, but Clare-Cork will be a cracker.
Clare-Cork will be a cracker. Waterford-Galway could be interesting too. Waterford obviously were run very close by Laois at the weekend, but have looked really good over the last 18 months or so. So it's difficult to know if that was a brilliant performance by Laois, putting Waterford to the pin of their collar, if Waterford played down to them, if Waterford were taking them for granted, took their eye off the ball and managed to get through, and so we'll have a scare as well. So we'll have a little while to preview those, and then obviously there'll be the winners of those two matches will play Tipperary or Dublin in the All-Ireland quarter-final. So there's a bit of a rest for the Munster and Leinster winners. Kilkenny obviously handling their business against a COVID-ravaged Dublin side. So hopefully Dublin get most of their players back and can do full justice to their season, because I think that they're kind of one of the underreported stories of the year so far as well. It's 8:47. If you want to get in touch with us, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. I'm delighted to say Anthony Moyles is with us. Anthony, good morning to you.
Morning, Ger. Eoin, how you doing?
So let's stick a fork in Dublin. They are done. That third quarter yesterday was indicative of the fall of empire. It creeps in slowly, but when it comes, you look back and you go, Jesus, it was obvious. That's what happened, right? That's what Tommy Rooney was telling me this morning.
That's what you're hoping for, Ger, for the next day, obviously. Yeah, I don't know if they're done. I'm still kind of, I don't know. I'm basking in a nice sense of, I suppose, being very, very satisfied with obviously how things went yesterday. And that's probably a desperate thing to say as a Meath man, from say 15, 20 years ago, where you'd say, 6-point defeat is a good result. But, considering everything that we were coming into it, whatever the odds-on favouritism was for Dublin, Meath not really showing any major form, the rows going on with the under-20s, a bit of distraction, a decent enough performance against Longford, Dublin being a bit undercooked. No one expected anything, but actually, the closer I got to the game and analysing obviously the Dublin team and the number of injuries and different absentees that they had, I thought it was an enormous opportunity. And I'm kind of caught between two stools this morning of, well, was that, did they do enough to pat themselves in the back and drive on from here, which I think they will, and they learn a lot, or will they actually, in the cold light of day, maybe in a week's time, look at it and go, oh my Jesus, that was an unbelievable opportunity, and we could have turned Dublin over and probably won the game. I think there was enough chances in that second half for them to do it, actually. And to go back to your original question, I don't think that's a Dublin defence that's going to win in All-Ireland. I think Dessie Farrell will be hoping to get back a number of players ASAP because whatever about their forward prowess, if I was the likes of Carey, Tyrone, or whoever's left in the championship, if I was a forward, I'd be licking my lips at having to go at that Dublin defence, because I just think there's a number of players in it who aren't, who are very, very good players, but I think they're just plugging holes in different sections that they're not really used to. And if you really look at some of the opportunities yesterday, they were pulled and dragged. Howard was pulled and dragged out. Cooper was pulled and dragged out. And they created gaps, Meath, and they created a lot of uncertainty in that defence that, I think if they were a little bit more composed and maybe a little bit more accomplished, they could have turned into big scores for them.
Was Howard largely at centre back, Anthony, and how traditional a centre back or stereotypical a centre back was he?
He wasn't really, Eoin.
Right.
It's hard to gauge. I was quite low down in the Hogan stands, which sometimes it's much better to be right up and to get a good overall view. But from what I could see, Cooper was slotting in a lot. And he wasn't really, they were kind of sharing it, I suppose, really, a bit of it. But of course, everything is so fluid now, and Meath had Brian McMahon, who was dropping back and was kind of really shepherding across their own 50. So, Meath at times really only had two fellas up front. They had Jordan Morris right inside on the full forward line, and they had Joey Wallace kind of at 11. So that was kind of how they were. And what often happened was Johnny Cooper just came back to be the +1 for Dublin. And Howard would go and try to punch holes. But that was in the first half. In the second half, kind of everything got thrown on its head, really, because, Meath really just started to compete. They started to actually go and compete for balls, compete for kickouts. They started to put Dublin men's on their arse. They started to really get stuck into it. And they started to front up, which of course has to be done. But unfortunately for them, it was too little too late, and they ran out of steam.
I wonder, so the argument that we were having a little bit earlier on was that actually Dublin got a little bit complacent, 11 points up, really hot day, long season ahead for them. They need to peak for an All-Ireland semi-final and took their eye off the ball a little bit in that third quarter. How much of that happened, and how much of it is actually Meath saying, come on, we need to actually show something here and getting into the game? That's my difficulty in overreacting to the performance.
I think there's probably a bit of both, to be honest, Ger. I think Dublin probably, like Desi Farrell, alluded to it, where he said, he expected a bit of a backlash from Meath. Most people I was speaking to at halftime, it was kind of like, Jesus, not this again, although there was grains of things to grab onto, such as the penalty decision, and people were bemoaning that, but people were really looking, going, wow. It was very easy for Dublin to get the scores in the first half. They were clipping scores over at their ease. Most scores that they got were from within that zone and that they usually like to kick to, and it wasn't under massive pressure. But it's funny, if you look at it, the switch was tripped because the very first score that Meath got, or the goal that Matthew Costello got, it actually came from the Meath defence. The ball was put into Con O'Callaghan and Seamus Lavin, and for the first time in the 35-40 minutes, Seamus Lavin was right up behind him, got a great hand in, got a good block on the ball, released the ball out, and Meath worked it up the field. And that was the first, I remember I just noted to myself, I said, well, that's the first real kind of pressure ball that has been, 50-50 ball that has been contested by Meath back. And you could see all of a sudden, and even it was weird, when they came out after the second half, Meath were bouncing around. There seemed to be a bit of a confidence about them. I think they felt themselves that they just didn't perform at all, that they weren't at the pitch of it, that they were standing off a bit. So there's probably a bit of both. Dublin probably came down slightly, and Meath, I think, really increased massively. As I said, they increased the physicality of it. They got stuck into the likes of Kilkenny, Con O'Callaghan and Paddy Small and Costello. They started to, there was a couple of big hits when the balls was being transferred into the middle section, and they started to rattle things up a bit, and they needed to build that defence. It was funny, Andy Mack, Donald Curtis, all the boys at the start of the second half, just before the throw-in for the second half, they were down with the defence and they had them all in, and it was kind of like a final G-up. And I think they realised that, listen, this has to start here. We have to put the pressure on here. We have to get the hits in. We have to put the intensity, increase the intensity, and that'll hopefully flow up the pitch. And I think it did. And I think Dublin were caught unawares on it, because you saw the likes of Kilkenny snatching at shots. You saw them shooting under pressure, pulling balls left and right, wide. And it was something that we were a little bit unaccustomed to seeing. And unfortunately, as I said, Meath just couldn't apply that extra bit of pressure and get that one or two extra scores that would have, I think, put a real grandstand finish on the game.
So a couple of things then. That defensive structure they have is not as solid as it has been in recent years. And the other thing that seems to be true is that they certainly don't have any of the strength and depth that we would have traditionally associated with. This time last year, this time 2 years ago, if they were having defensive issues, they could have brought on Michael Dara-McCauley and move James McCarthy back into a purely defensive role, or they could have brought on Ciaran O'Sullivan, or they could have brought on a bunch of other players, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So is that the thing that's going to make Tyrone and Carey and Mayo and maybe Galway think, come on, now? It's now or never, lads.
Look, Jerry, I think you're 100% right. I think we flagged this a number of weeks ago. Like if you look back on one of their first teams, I think during the league, their half-back line has been completely ripped out. You know, I've said to you guys before that John Small is an enormous loss, and he is an enormous loss because he can hold that 6 and he can create havoc going forward. He makes those surging runs, but he's a pivotal player. If you watch him and you watch any footage back of Dublin, when they play the +1, he is the man that has the +1. And anytime a ball is transferred into the centre area of the attacking team's forward players, Small is generally the one who kind of comes and either gets a man, or he'll apply the pressure on the ball there, or he'll intercept the ball. So he's always watching, he's analysing, he's seeing where it's going. He doesn't get pulled out. He doesn't end up way out left, way out right. He's always in the central area. So his loss, I think, is enormous. You didn't have yesterday that kind of thing that we would have associated with Dublin over the last number of years, like a la Jack McCaffrey. You didn't have those really crazy speed, incisive runs that you get. And you know, you haven't got Merchant's out. And you haven't got McDade on the far side. So there's a whole half back line that I think Dessie Farrell would have said, they're my 5, 6 and 7. Yeah. They're now gone. So, you know, you're coming down. So not only do you have to replace one, you have to replace all 3 there, which is tough going for any team. And I think Lahith is a different type of player. He's a big, strong, physical fella, but he's a different type of player. I don't think he has that blinding pace that Merchant or McDade have. I don't think he makes those runs where he's going beyond the ball and he's causing you as a defender to look back. Like if you watch the game back yesterday, Meath in the second half stepped up. They kept shepherding them across. And then when they had the opportunity to try, when Dublin tried to put in the ball, they pounced. They got really close and then they got really tight and they won a lot of turnovers on it. So in other words, what happened was Dublin were just going lateral and they didn't really have those guys who were able to stretch the Meath defence, as I say, when you had the likes of the other players. So it is a worry, Ger, and you know I think Dessie Farrell alluded to it with an interview with Tommy where he's saying, you know, a game of 2 halves, and I think he'd be silly to look at the second half and kind of go, oh, we took. Look at the first half and go, oh, we played great stuff. I think he needs to look at the first half and say, well, Jesus, Meath stood off us. They allowed us play. They probably gave us a bit too much respect. Okay, the penalty incident, that could be a 6-point swing, but let's disregard that even for the moment. I think the most alarming thing for him is he's probably looking, going, you know what, if I'm playing a team that come up and they have the likes of O'Shea, Clifford, Paddy Clifford, all those lads, now you're getting into a situation, or Tyrone, you're getting into a situation where you've got a number of other elements that I think could cause massive problems for that Dublin defence.
How did Comerford do under the increased pressure of the second half yesterday?
I think he was fine on. You know, I don't think he put a couple of kickouts out that kind of hung in the air to where he has a tendency to kick out to his right. That's his go-to spot. So he kicked a lot out to his right hand side. So second half he's kicking out under the Hogan, and a number of them do drift. They they can hang a bit and they're there to be attacked. His kind of get out of jail one then is when he just swings it out left, and it's kind of a lower kick. It's just into that little pocket of space that Fenton often runs into. But I tell you, Fenton and McCarthy, like Fenton is still the man as regards bailing them out. Like when Comerford needed someone to come and dictate and say, listen, put it in here to me, Fenton was normally the one who came and did it for him. Like he was head and shoulders the guy that kept Dublin at vital times. I'm sure you guys, you remember that score where they were holding onto the ball for 4 or 5 minutes, and it was him who got it. And that, honestly, a turnover there would have felt like a score for Meath. And the point for Dublin, of course, felt like 2 or 3. It was the final dagger into the heart. And it was typical that to be honest, their talisman and their leader got it. And he's still a massive force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. Like there's still enough quality in the team for them to be favourites for the All-Ireland. It's just believable now that Tyrone could beat them, or Mayo could beat them, or Carey could beat them, or I don't know if Galway could, but like we'll have to. I'm not writing them off, and I'm not writing Monaghan off either. I just feel like those other teams have a bit more about them. Let's talk a little bit about Tyrone's performance against Donegal. Like there were stages in the games where it looked like they were going to be able to blow Donegal out, but then Donegal clawed them back into the game because like Donegal are a really, really strong team even without Murphy. So how much progress does it feel from a Tyrone perspective that they make, or I guess is a victory like that almost worth more than just the actual progression in the championship, because you have strength and depth now, you have players coming off the bench who are really top quality players, and you have seen off one of your main rivals in a ding-dong game?
Well, it's funny, Jared, you know, you talk about that and you look at, say, the different setups, first of all, and the different decisions that were made by management, you know. So Donegal rely on Murphy, obviously, massive player for them. And in the last few games, they have persisted on playing him rather than holding him back and saying, when obviously the guy has been hampered, be it physically or now even potentially mentally, because, you know, I've been there. I was there in 2007, where you were coming into an All-Ireland semi-final, you have a hamstring injury, you have 3 weeks, you're doing absolutely everything right, it feels right, you're doing all that, and it's mentally draining because pretty much every single minute of every day, all you're doing is thinking about getting this thing correct. And you're trying everything. Like, I mean, you'll go to a witch doctor and, you know, do whatever you want, seance. So you will literally travel the country to try to get the thing right. And you're really putting you're getting yourself and you're putting yourself in the hands of someone else, be it the medical team. There's very little, you know, you can control. You're just hoping that your body heals. And that, as I say, is can be mentally draining. It was really interesting to see Murphy's reaction when he got that second yellow or whatever, it was a black for the kick. I think it was unlucky. I think he pulled on the ball, but it was late. But he, you know, he resigned himself very quickly to going off the pitch. He didn't G up any of the other lads. He put his head down and walked off. He looked like a guy to me that was just absolutely mentally exhausted from the last month. If I was Declan Bonner, I would have removed that pressure from him and said, listen, we have enough around. We have enough good young lads. We can do this with you. We still need you around. We still need all that, you know, your aura, and you're going to come off the bench for us with 10, 15 minutes to go. You flip to Tyrone, and Tyrone have McShane. They have all these other guys waiting in the wings to come on and make a contribution. And by Jesus, did they make a contribution yesterday off the bench. I think there was 5 or 6 points kicked off the bench. You know, they needed that incision, that extra bit of intensity when it was required. You know, and then you flip to, just to go back to Meath for a second, Meath didn't really bring that on. And neither did Dublin, to be fair. So Tyrone have managed to get into a situation where no matter who they have in that front six, they're mobile enough, they're comfortable on the ball enough to get scores, but they're also very proficient at being able to play in that system that they have, turn defence into attack very quickly. And then when the game is opened up a bit, he's able to bring in some serious power and change the game around. I think they're cooking up very, very nicely, Tyrone, and they'll be delighted with that result of the weekend.
Are they realistic contenders? They were written off by Pat Spillane on the telly. Like, no, they're definitely not going to win All-Ireland this year. Look how amazing it is. They've come back from being hammered by Carey. He said 3 weeks ago. It was actually 5 weeks ago. And, you know, it's a completely different scenario. First league game versus the Ulster semi-final. So, and we're just hearing that they've applied to move that game, the Ulster final, to Croke Park, where we know Monaghan do not like playing Tyrone in Croke Park. Stick that game somewhere in Ulster. Monaghan would really like that. Monaghan's record in Croke Park, absolutely abysmal. So, I'm not sure if that's a big win for Banty, but...
no, I don't think so. And I think it's harsh on Monaghan. I think, you know, you go to their, like... Look, I'm amazed that that game went ahead, to be honest with you. I think because if Monaghan had lost, I think people would have pointed to the fact of obviously the tragic situation that was surrounding it. Terrible loss, obviously, to the Monaghan Gaels, the family and everything else. Just a horrible situation. And for those lads to go out and do what they did with that kind of, you know, hanging in the back of their mind or in front of their mind and just presiding over the whole game was phenomenal. But I think, honestly, I rewatched it and I looked at it for long periods. I think Armagh absolutely blew their own 2 feet off in the first half. They weren't engaging. They had no intensity. A la Meath, they weren't getting up into players' faces. They were standing off. They just thought it would happen. I don't know what they were doing. They were reverting back behind the 50. They were allowing balls to be pinged into McCarron, and then they weren't even chasing runners. And the second half was chalk and cheese. And really, they should have probably won the game if they had managed to get that ball. There was a hand pass that just didn't go. If you remember, late on, it didn't get released to the young Quinlan lad. And I think if that hand pass had been released to him, they would have got another score, potentially a goal. And I think they would have seen that game out. Now, fair play to Monaghan. McManus, did what he always does, stepped up, took the leadership on, won a couple of frees, stuck them over the bar, and they won the game. But I think you're right. I think Tyrone, it'll be close and it'll be everything, but I think Tyrone are currently a better outfit, and they're motoring a bit better. And just from those two games, from purely from what I'm seeing, I think Armagh will be absolutely kicking themselves that they had a first half that they had, like literally everything that could go wrong went wrong for them, and they still could have won the game. Monaghan will be buoyed by the fact that they dug it out and that they came back when it looked like they were dead and buried, which is enormous test to their mental strength and their resilience. But I think Tyrone can change it up, Ger. I think they can play it short, they can play it running, they can put some big men in, they can bring McShane in, they can switch it. And I can see that, the management team are trying to get this situation where they're bringing 5 or 6 fellas off the bench that not only add something, but completely alter their strategy and their tactics. So I think they're dangerous.
Yeah, good stuff. Anthony, thanks a million. Cheers.
No bother, lads. Cheers.
If Carey are to get through against Cork next weekend and they're massive odds-on favourites, who would they prefer in an All-Ireland semi-final?
Monaghan all day long. That Tyrone performance yesterday was really impressive. As we touched on at the top of the show, the way they managed to ride out that black card at the end, because I thought that was a really significant moment, because Donegal, being a man down, had got it back to level scores. I know it was probably another 10 minutes before that, again, the O'Donnell score that brought it back to level pegging. I thought that Tyrone were on a tightrope at that point. Just a little nudge and they were going to fall off, and I thought that black card was going to be really significant. And they managed to hold on to their lead really well. And as Anthony mentioned there, the firepower they managed to bring off the bench completely changed their game plan. And they're finding their way into a new style of play, which means that there is a ceiling there that Monaghan just don't have at the moment. And Monaghan obviously are, it's like, again, I kind of would echo what Anthony was saying the other day. We're never kind of sure if that game was going to go ahead. And you would have felt desperately sorry for Monaghan and the players had it not, the result not gone their way on Saturday as well. They would have had right to kind of suggest, why did the game happen? So they'll ride that for the next couple of weeks, and that will be a cracking Ulster final, really good Ulster final. And I can see Monaghan winning it, but I would say Tyrone would be rightly favourites for it, and they're a team you don't want to be playing at the moment because they've hit form.
Yeah, they have hit form, and they have strength and depth, and they have an alternative way of playing within games that could be challenging for Kerry and or Dublin if they were to get over Kerry in an All-Ireland semi-final. Right, the star, I want to bring you this. So I was trying to find this for you a little bit earlier on, but I finally managed to get my hands on it. It is Gerlach Nan's column. Two things here I want to talk about. Limerick must now be one of the best teams we've ever seen. This is proper high praise from somebody who has watched 6.5, 7 decades of hurling, as a hurling historian. If they keep developing and driving on, they could rival Brian Cody's greatest Kilkenny side. The truth is that they savage Tipperary. You have to admire the way they go about their business. They're a magnificent team. It's going to be very hard for Liam Sheedy and Tip to come back from this. It reminded me of '96 when Tip gave up a 10-point lead to Limerick. That game ended in a draw with Limerick winning the replay. This time, you could say it was a 5-point defeat, which isn't a humiliation, but the fact that Tip led by 10 will haunt them. So that 15-point swing is obviously a thing. But when we were chatting with Ciaran Carey earlier on, the line wasn't great, but he has told us before he thinks that they have the potential to go on and be as good as the Dubs are in football. That is greatest of all time territory. That's what's on the table for this group of players.
100%. The one issue I'd have with them possibly going and actually emulating that is I think it's just more difficult than what the Dubs did. Yes, there is more counties who play football than play hurling, but there are more hurling counties that are competitive for an All-Ireland than there are for football, and that was certainly the case with Dublin over the last few years.
So it would be a better achievement if they were to do a 5 in a row.
5 or 6 in a row.
Is Kilkenny's 4 in a row better than Dublin's 6th?
Ooh, good question.
But there weren't as many competitive counties at that point, were there?
Yeah, but like, did hurling feel thinner on the ground then because Kilkenny were so good, or Kilkenny able to win 4 in a row because hurling was thinner on the ground? Whereas now, as it seems, we've got such a, pre-COVID obviously, with the 2 championships that we got in 19 and 18, there were so many amazing games. We became so familiar with these teams, and it felt like hurling was in the best place ever.
Yeah, I think as well the fact that Limerick aren't one of the traditional 3, and like there's Dublin and Carey in football, who have been the 2 dominant forces forever, and obviously Dublin have all the advantages that they have. And if Limerick were to do 4 in a row or 5 in a row, you'd have to say that that creation is. I mean, look, it's an interesting conversation, right? But
and of course, like, I mean, there's huge levels of investment that have gone in on Limerick, and that is why they were able to sustain this, and that's why they look like they'll be able to sustain it for quite some time. But it's happened with also an incredibly gifted bunch of people who've been coached in a perfect way.
Style of play that's great to watch, like a bravery, an attacking fluency. I saw somebody at halftime on Twitter giving out about the fact that anytime anybody ever mentions hurling, it's always like, oh, this is the greatest game, blah, blah, blah. Look, it's sickening. I was like, it's kind of true. There's definitely a bang of every match is always amazing. And then, like, literally yesterday was the greatest game. That might be the greatest game ever. It just might have been, like, one of the best teams of all time, putting in an all-time performance against a Tipperary side who are absolutely brilliant. Like, that is a Tipperary side that the backbone of it has 3 All-Ireland medals in their back pockets, multiple hurlers of the year, a management team that is, like, as smart and brilliant a management team as there has ever been, and who are as well resourced a side as there has ever been in hurling. And so look, maybe yesterday was not the case, the time to be making that. I did want to talk to you about what Loughnane had said about Davy Fitzgerald. When he was playing for Kerry, Paul Galvin took no prisoners, and that was no act. That is his nature. He managed the Wexford footballers for a brief spell and didn't see eye to eye with Davy. After Davy's self-serving interviews following Wexford's defeat to Clare on Saturday, Galvin made his feeling known on Twitter. The first sentence set the tone. He loves to play the victim when it suits him. And that was so Paul Galvin did tweet that at the weekend, and it was really interesting because it was the audio of the interview that Davy Fitz gave. That's a 5-minute interview he gave to South East Radio, and I think the first question is essentially about the performance versus last year, and then there was another question about something else, and then immediately Davy started talking about the year that he had. It was the most difficult, the toughest year that he and his family had ever had. And he went on to say that, you know, there's a few people in Clare who are causing the issues, and there's a few people in the media who are stoking it, and there's abuse online that he and his family have taken on social media as well, and that it needs to stop, and that if anybody ever set up a meeting between him and Lohan, even though he doesn't like Lohan or how Lohan goes about his business, and I'm sure Lohan would say the same thing about him, Davy made the point that he would shake hands and that would be the end of it, and he would move on if that was to be the scenario. And then he said he wasn't talking anymore, and essentially that was the end of it. It's up on our Twitter channel. You can get it on South East Radio's website as well. But Paul Galvin took to Twitter, tweeted what he tweeted, and I don't think Loughnane is buying it either. Davy's problem is he can no longer distinguish between myth and reality. Galvin's bang on the money. All this stuff that he comes out with about his father and social media abuse and clubs conspiring against him, what is he at? I believe Davy has become a pathetic figure and object of fun. They're the words of Ger Loughnane in the Star newspaper this morning. That's a big problem, and it's a shame because he has done a huge amount for hurling. Davy's problem is he has been indulged by the media, especially RTE, for 10 years. Is there anyone in Irish sport on the Late Late Show more often?
Probably Jason Byrne, and that's about it. That's it. Like the list of the Late Late Show guests, and Tony Houlihan maybe up there in the last year as well.
Yeah.
And then Davy number 3.
I mean, Dave, look, his Ireland's Fittest Family is a massive cash cow. So like you can see from RTE's perspective, this is the goose that's laying the golden eggs. Effectively, Davy has been given licence to behave how he wants, and he's lost the run of himself. On Saturday, his tactics were an absolute joke. And then he goes on to explain why that was, and he's suggesting that Eddie Brennan is who Wexford should get in, which very interesting.
Interesting shout.
Yeah.
I think Davy Fitzgerald deserves to walk of his own accord. I'm not entirely sure about this whole... I don't know, it's sort of being painted that he's almost in like a Jose Mourinho type position where his results almost lead him to being sacked. But actually what we're kind of playing the man here rather than the ball a little bit. I think anyway, like... I know the crux of Loughnan's argument is, in fairness, it is unapologetically about the man. He isn't trying to play the ball as such this morning, but like he's also talking about a potential successor there. Are Wexford just going to forget about 2019? Like, are they just going to forget about that title? Like, we had Liam Griffin on the morning after, and it was like dancing at the crossroads stuff. It was like this magical morning for Wexford. It was like one of the great pieces we'd done because Liam Griffin was just such a happy man. It could have got to an All-Ireland final that year. Whereas tactics off on it this weekend, they probably were, but there was also an onus on the players to be a little bit more clinical, I felt, in that last quarter of the game. Maybe if they were set up in a better way, they wouldn't have. They could have actually had the game won before then.
Well, they also were like level with Kilkenny at the end of injury time, and this is a Kilkenny side who people think might be able to put it up to Limerick, who we want to see the third game, and I don't know. Like it's very hard to know at this point because everything has become so personalised. Like. And yes, I don't know.
Exactly. That's it. It has become very personalised, and you're well within your rights to say what you want about him as the man. But like, what is he in a position now where he not get sacked, because people don't necessarily get sacked from those positions? But is it time for Wexford to intervene and
maybe he's taken that team as far as they can go, and that is the scenario that like you come in, there's a jolt of energy, everybody does exactly what they're supposed to do, and it takes a while, but other teams get to a point where they can work out what you need to do to beat that Wexford side. And
that is what is the reality now. If you're looking for change, I think that's a reasonable case to be made. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he doesn't stay around for next year. I think that he should have some sort of input in it, but I can also see the argument there that Davy Fitz does take a team. He burns out after a while. The players burn out. The methods probably burn out after a while, and I can see that argument for sure.
17 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM, brought to you every morning by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Reaction Paddy Andrews and Tommy Walsh still to come before 10 o'clock this morning. We're back talking the Lions with Alan Quinlan next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Dad Pod.
This is a video thing as well.
Does it have a name? Podcast.
Midlife crisis.
Paddy Daddy.
Midlife crisis.
Dadcast. That's not bad, actually. Yeah.
There was definitely a period of a couple of months where meltdowns were becoming more frequent, and now when she's outside and she's sort of playing with the neighbours' kids, like if she doesn't get her own way, the meltdown is quite extreme. So maybe that's the terrible twos, but I think maybe we've escaped the worst of it.
Well, I think the terrible twos is a bit of a misnomer because it goes into the 3s and 4s.
Dadcast, Tuesdays from 3 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Jazz, for the lesser known 1970s jazz version is Happy Birthday.
Oh God. I genuinely thought this was like a new Alan Quinlan's thing. I thought it was like, do we have like a news thing because we rolled out news things last week? Alan Quinlan likes his jazz, so I thought that was what.
Late 20s, Eoin. Welcome to the ball game.
Not very happy about that.
How old are you?
I thought that are we not pausing ages pre-COVID? So what age you were in March 2020? Just the clock resumes again once either you get jabbed or I don't know, once nightclubs open again or something. Is that the moment? So I haven't aged a day since March 2020.
And so what's your official age on your passport though?
It'll tell me that I'm 27.
Oh wow, the 27 club. This is danger zone for
365 more days. I hope it's not a leap year next year to get out of this alive, hopefully. I do not want to join the 27 club.
Happy birthday, Eoin.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. You made it to the other side of and now you're in a cohort that can get jabbed, right?
Getting jabbed tomorrow, believe it or not. Yeah.
Right. Which one are you getting?
The J&J. One jab is all it takes for me. So that's the plan for this week.
Well, congratulations. What a great week.
What a great week indeed. Thank you.
Is it going to be a great week for Conor Murray? Do you like that segue?
That was really good. I think we should keep this little interlude for Alan Quinlan every time we do rugby.
Alan, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. How are you?
You're very good. All of a sudden, Conor Murray's gone from captain of the entire thing to looking in from the outside, and the calls for Ali Price, particularly from the English media, are very, very powerful. It looks like somebody somewhere has been given a leak that Ali Price might be about to start.
Yeah, he's under pressure, no doubt. I think the South African A game on Wednesday didn't go well for all those Lions players, not just Conor Murray. I think it's probably the pace and tempo, but when you're playing a side that you're winning by nearly 50 points, they beat the Stormers 49-3. Of course, your scrum half is going to look well and look good. And he's a good player, Price, to be fair, and so is Gareth Davies. They're probably a little bit different than Conor. They're probably have a little bit more zip and sniping ability around the sides of the rucks than Conor. But it's amazing. Look at what happened to Peter Mahoney.
He's
captain at first. It's a tricky one for him.
It is tricky. We've a clip of Eoin Gatland talking about the captaincy situation as well, which I think feeds into a little bit of the doubts that there are about Conor Murray at the moment. So let's play you this clip and we'll have a go at that. No, we actually don't have that clip. Right, okay. It is tricky because with that pressure and with the absence of the captaincy, I think it's not guaranteed that he's going to get picked. Tell me, he's in your team though. You've named a team for us. You've gone Vunipola, Ken Owens, Furlong, Itoje, Alan Wynne-Jones, Curry, Tadhg-Beirne, Faletau, Murray and Bigger, Henshaw Daly, Van der Merwe, Liam Williams and Anthony Watson. That's correct? That's your team?
Yeah, I suppose people would say, why isn't Josh Adams in it? Again, he scored loads of tries and he's a brilliant player, big work rate. But I've gone for Van der Merwe because of his power and physicality and, just obviously, if you were to dissect every player's ability, you'll find little weaknesses, and probably his maybe, if the South Africans kick a lot in behind him, his turning ability and all that. But I think Henshaw was the foreign player going into the tour. Okay, he'd didn't have a lot of involvements the other night against the Stormers, but I think he deserves to start. I think he's a big game player. He's mentally tough and strong. He knows Dia Linde inside out, I suppose, and has played against him a couple of times this year and before. Tadhg-Beirne, I think he's just got better and better as the tour has gone on. He's carried that form from the Six Nations. Furlong is probably the only guaranteed starter we have. He's definitely going to start. But I would start Conor Murray because I'm not... If they're looking back at these games and they... and it's a type of game they want to play. Are they going to try and move the ball around a bit? They've probably held a fair bit back, I would imagine, the Lions. They've stuttered. They were physically put under a lot of pressure last Wednesday against the South African A side. And I just think you making a guy captain 2 or 3 weeks ago and suddenly not picking him on the team now. Of course, Gatland can make big calls, and he's made big calls before. Look at what happened to Drico in 2013. So I think I'd go with him at the start, and I'd have that impact off the bench with Davies or with Ali Price to come on. I've also went for Ken Owens. Luke Cowan-Dickey was brilliant the other night again, but I go back to what I said. It's a very dominant performance right across the board. They're playing a weak team and they win convincingly. I think Ken Owens' brute force and physicality and his scrummaging ability will be really important because the South Africans will go after him in the scrum. But look, Jerry, you're splitting hairs with so many players here, particularly, and Warren Gatland has said to himself, the back three and the back row, maybe the second rows. Itoje is probably nailed on the second row, but to be fair, Henderson could easily start with Itoje and do a really good job there. He's probably a bit unlucky that Alan Wynne-Jones has come back, but if you're bringing Alan Wynne-Jones back into the squad, I think he'll put him back into the team. Yeah,
it feels that way, and it looked like Beard's performance maybe I don't know if it's off the bench or if it's just the impact that he's had, but Beard has been sensational. And so it's hard to know if Henderson is even third at the moment. And then Courtney Laws gets in the squad because he covers a back row position as well. And then that means if Courtney Laws is your bench player, does that mean Tyke Byrne gets in the team? He's in your team, but Hamish Watson isn't. That's where he'd be concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Hamish Watson's a very good player, and again, he played really well the other night, but I just go on the opposition. They've had 6 dominant performances here, and there's been lots of mistakes and concerns in those performances. They've won 5 of them and lost the South African game, but every other game they were very, very dominant on the front foot, so it's going to be totally different kettle of fish on Saturday. I just think Jack Conan off the bench would be a real impact, particularly with his ball carrying ability and his reading of the game. He's very close to starting, but I think Warren Gatland will go with Faletau at number 8. But you could put Curry 6 as well, and you could put Hamish Watson start him on the team, and I'd have no problem with that. Well, I would have a problem because I think Byrne deserves to start, but it'd still be a very strong back row. But I think the bench is going to be really, really important, the impact off the bench. And, because they're going to be pretty intense. The concern for South Africa's point of view is, they haven't been able to prepare very well. So the Lions have had 6 games and they've had loads of options and opportunities to look at things they need to get better at. They've had that match fitness under their belt, and what will South Africa be like next Saturday?
When it comes to this team selection, Alan, are you considering the possibility of all-out warfare over the course of the next 3 weeks? I mean, the off-field tension is starting to simmer just a little bit between Gatland and Rassie Erasmus at this point. Surely that spills onto the pitch in some shape or form this weekend. Yeah, there'll be niggle in this, there's no doubt about it. I think South Africa don't want to regress from where they were in World Cup winners. There's a swagger about them, there's a presence about their players, and they certainly want to impose themselves. And Rassie has probably been well prepared for Warren Gatland, and given his history of making comments and trying to stir the pot a little bit before matches. He's always done it with Ireland. He had a bit of a rough time in New Zealand a few years ago, where the New Zealand media were giving him a hard time. And I suppose Rassie Erasmus reacted to the Faf de Klerk tackle and Warren Gatland saying it should have been a red, and he was disappointed with that. I didn't think it was a red. I thought it was a bit reckless. The yellow card was the right call, and so I think we'll see a few sparks flying. There's no doubt about it, and I think given everything that's gone on and the uncertainty of the tour and no crowds, now that we're at the business end of it. This can pass them by very, very quickly. And Saturday, 2 weeks, it's all over. It's flown by. And I think there will be a bite to this, and there'll be an aggression from both sides. And for the first time in a long time, I think I've said this to you last week or previous weeks, that it's the most uncertain Lions selection that we've probably ever had. Normally, before Lions tours, you can pick 10, 12 guys that are nailed on starters. There's a debate about 3 or 4 positions, but right across the board, you could make so many cases for so many players. And the concern is the leadership thing, and that's why I think it'll swing in Conor Murray's favour. Maybe I'm wrong. He might go for Price and just play with loads of tempo and loads of width in their game. I do feel they're holding something back, the Lions, set plays, strike moves, things like that. And if they want real pace off the breakdown and someone bouncing around the place, it'll be Ali Price or Gareth Davies. But I think the kicking game is going to be really, really vital, not just in the Lions' receipt of South Africa's kicking game, but they're going to have to kick well themselves, because you mess around your own half against a strong physical side who can knock you back over the gain line. You'll have issues. So the kicking part of that is going to be really, really, really important for the Lions.
For whatever reason, the Lions are still the favourites with the bookmakers to win the Test series. I think that the South Africans should be favourites, given that the quality of the performance that the A team put in was excellent, and you're going to add in another layer of world-class players to that group. And they are the reigning World Cup champions. And I know they haven't played that much rugby collectively, but most of their players have been playing at a very, very high level in Europe over the last while. I would make them favourites just on the basis that this Lions tour has not given the Lions as much opportunity to do the normal things that you would do on a tour because of COVID, and therefore they have more to make up than South Africa.
Yeah, of the 6 games, Ger, I think they've been exposed a fair few times against average teams. And the South Africa game the other night was a real wake-up call from. Now, I know myself as a player, you can take a lot out of a game like that. They could have scored 2 tries. They probably, could have won it in the second half, but lots of issues there for them. And I think the reason the Lions are favourites is because of the amount of matches they've played, and no crowds in South Africa, no hostility there around, going in and out of the stadium. It can be a very hostile place. South Africa's COVID cases, their lack of game time. As a team, I think you make a very relevant point that all their top players have played throughout the season, and big game players, I think they'll probably have kept themselves individually in shape. They might lack a bit of, be a little bit rusty, but I think the A players last week, most of them were probably going to be involved in the test match. I think it's, Malherbe, Pollard, Bombanami, guys like this are going to come back into Kalise, De Jager, RG Snyman. Will he be involved? And Vermeulen, who's an incredible player. So they're bringing back a lot of might into their 23. But they've got to jam a lot of stuff in this week. I think Jack Nienaber said that, most of these players know the systems, they know the plays, they know the environments, and that'll probably help them. But I think I have a feeling South Africans are in a stronger position, and I agree with you. But I do think the Lions will be a lot better. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't the last few weeks with the opposition they've played. I think they've got to take their performance up to another level to have any chance on Saturday. And the first test is crucial, as they all are on the tour, on Lions tours.
Yeah, I mean, the point you make, it could all be over actually on Saturday week if the Lions lose or if the Lions win their first 2 tests. But those third tests have given us some drama in history, and we're really looking forward to it. Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, lads.
That's Alan Quinlan, who's obviously part of our commentary team for the 3 tests against the Lions. Every Lions test match against South Africa will be live across Off the Ball. Our Lions coverage is brought to you in association with Vodafone, lead partner of the British and Irish Lions. So it's Brian O'Driscoll on commentary duty alongside Neil for the first 2 tests, and Alan will be on commentary duty for the 3rd of the 3 test series. It's 5 o'clock kickoffs every Saturday afternoon for the next 3 Saturdays, and it's live on the OTB Sports app, and of course also on Off the Ball on News Talk. A few comments for you coming in from a little bit earlier on. Marcus Smith had a class game. He's someone who can be just the spark for the Lions. He needs to be on the bench for the first test, and if Biggar and Farrell don't perform, he could push for the test start. Benji says, Meath have beaten Dublin 5 times at underage in the last 5 years, 11 points in 2020. Meath hammered Dubs at minor. Another Meath underage team beat the Dubs by 10 points recently. Hickey, Costello, Morris on these teams, so Meath are a coming force. Is Ger serious? Dublin's average winning margin in Leinster has been 15 points before coming into this year's championship, yet they don't blow teams away. Also, Dublin are typically strongest in the 3rd quarter, but yesterday Meath kept them scoreless for that period. I mean,
are we using the game in Thurles to inform us on this as well? Or to inform my side of the argument, I should say, on this, given that was the period where they looked mortal against Carey in the league as well?
The 3rd quarter.
Do you remember that? Yeah. Because there's starting to be a theme emerging. Is that why we're really into this yesterday?
Maybe. I mean, look, I'm absolutely open to being wrong in this. I just felt like, as overreaction Mondays go, we shouldn't overreact to this just yet. But if the body of evidence is there that the Dubs are failing, that the empire is crumbling, that the pyramids are about to collapse, well then. Superb performance from Irish athletes. A 16-year-old Nicholas Griggs winning gold, and Cian McPhillips, 15, 100 metres winning gold. Question for Ciaran Carey: which score was better, his own solo point in 96 or Kyle Hayes' solo goal yesterday? Unfortunately, his line wasn't good enough for us to put that to them, but they are two. That's the level of score. All-time classic. People still watch that Ciaran Carey point and go, Jesus. And people are going to be watching that Kyle Hayes goal forever going, that was absolutely amazing. For the weather being so spectacular, it was just perfect. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. At 9:34, we're going to bring you some top quality analysis from the hurling and football. We have Paddy Andrews and we also have some Tommy Walsh goodness. We're back tomorrow talking to Harry and Ross Byrne. There'll be our latest Gaelic football power rankings and much more as well. So here's Paddy Andrews in Croke Park. First, Tommy Walsh after the Munster hurling final.
Full time here in Páirc Uí Chaoimh for the 2021 Munster final, which has ended Limerick 229, Tipperary 321. Tommy Walsh, you were watching the game for Off the Ball today. Tommy, talk us through that Limerick second half performance, which was just absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it was incredible, Dahi. Nobody seen it at half time. Usually hurling is not like a light switch where you can turn on and off on the one day. Tipperary started like a train, up by 10 points at half time, doing all the hurling. They're out in front, they're winning all the 50-50 challenges, and you're wondering, you know, Limerick is the 3 in a row in Munsters, is it too far? But no, they came out in that second half. I suppose the 2 goals were instrumental. When you're trying to fight back a 10-point lead, goals are very important, not just for the scoreboard, because they score 25, 30 points nearly every game anyway, but it's the confidence it gives you going into the last quarter. 1-10 to score to 1 point in the third quarter. I thought that was the winning for it. You take the ball, Kyle Hayes, when he got the ball, or when Aaron Gillan got the ball, he was after actually kind of sneaking into the corner. No one picked him up. Just a real poacher's effort. When he went in there, Gerard Hegarty brought the ball. He didn't give the ball to him too early. Gave it to him at the last second. Gillan went in. I thought he shot from too far out, and it was a great save by the Tipperary goalkeeper who came out to Flanagan, as all good poachers do. They're waiting for the chance that it is saved. That's the way you have to think if it's a forward. You're always in the game, and he was there just to kind of scramble it over the line. He finished with 1-3, and no, it was a powerful third quarter for Limerick.
What exactly was it in that third quarter that set Limerick apart from Tipperary? I was talking to John Kiley earlier on, and he pointed about that third quarter. Likewise, Liam Sheedy. What for you exactly was the winning of that third quarter?
Yeah, it was just the boys turned up in the third quarter. They fought hard, Limerick, in the first half, but we're getting no luck in that third quarter. Everything just turned well for them. You spoke about yourself, Dahi, the Patrick Swell trio. They were instrumental. Lynch out centre forward, kind of midfield. He wasn't just floating around winning loose balls. He was winning the balls he should never have been winning. Ball coming out here under the stand here, a man on his tail, getting down with the hand and it's stuck to his hand. And that doesn't just happen. He's probably hitting the ball off the wall 15, 20 minutes a day. It could be 2 hours a day, I don't know. But he's a great man to win them balls. And when they really needed him, he turned up in that third quarter. Second Patrick Swell man was Diarmaid Burns on the half-back line. Now that half-back line is the launch pad for this Limerick team. Nothing goes past them. They're like the Great Wall of China. They just build it and nothing goes past. You have Burns, Declan Hannon was brilliant in, you know, a different type of player. He's not going to be soloing up the field, but he reads the game brilliantly, and he was catching balls, laying them off, spotting the guys and their runs out around midfield. So I thought the Patrick Swell lads, Diarmaid Burns was brilliant that third quarter, and sure, Gillan himself then. Gillan came on at half time. We all were wondering, how did they drop him? He's the free taker, he's the go-to man. I think in the last Munster final 2019 he scored 2 more goals. So you know, it was a risky move for John Kiley, but it paid off because the impact he had, as he spoke to you earlier on, the impact that Gillan had, not just on the scoreboard, but to the crowd, because when he came on, they were hitting him shoulders, he was hitting them shoulders back, and listen, they brought their intensity levels up.
The first half from Tipperary, were you surprised as to going in at half-time leading by 10 points? Did that surprise you that Tipperary were that far ahead?
It would surprise you that they're 10 points ahead of that Limerick team, but it wouldn't surprise me the performance from the Tipperary players. They've been doing it since 2010. Like Bubbles the Wire got 2 balls underneath the stand here, hit 2 wides that he never hits. a lesser man, you'd say he won't shoot again. He finishes the half at 1-2. Jason Ford, 7 points from playing 6 points in the first half alone. Like, he was on a tour de force, and we kind of picked up on it. You were chatting to me there during the game that they seem to be picking up him then in the second half. So you take a man that scores 6 points from playing the first half. If someone then starts following him and he's not picking up them points, well, then your team is going to suffer. So that was a big move from Limerick. I thought the first half, tactically, I thought they got it spot on. I thought intensity and spirit-wise, they had it spot on. So I thought everything in that first half, Tipperary got spot on. Their young lad, Jake Morris, in corner forward, you know, the pressure, I suppose, is on him to now become the leader that Callan was when he was that age, that, say, Noel McGrath was, Paddy Marr, and he stepped up, and I thought he gave a great account of himself today, and he scored the goal to set him on the road in that first half in the start. So I think just their silken skills with that Tipperary team, and the fact that they've won a couple of All-Irelands, both senior and under 20, under 21, shows they can do it on the big day as well. So no, nothing surprised me about it.
One of the big talking points probably that will come out of this game is in the second half, down at the right hand corner here, this end of the field, facing you, Aaron Gillan and Cathal Barrett. It looked like Aaron Gillan swiped out at Cathal Barrett. Your thoughts on that? Do you think maybe there should have been a red card there?
Yeah, well, Dahi, it comes down to when you're watching it on telly, the cameras are unbelievable now. So you see every sort of an angle, you see it in slow motion, you get to watch it. Like, you hear the guys in the Sunday game, we watched that clip back 10 times, 20 times. A referee can't do that. I thought Paul Dwyer was doing a fantastic job. Like, there was so many scores from play alone. You'll have the stats on that later on, but it was an incredible match to watch as a neutral. Like, even I suppose the Limerick supporters, they felt they should have got a few frees. They weren't happy in the first half. Tipperary won't be happy, I suppose. If he did slap, I suppose it is a sending off. But did the referee see it? Did Pod see it? He wouldn't have had it. If he had to saw that, I'm sure he would have given the red card. And like, you know, it looked from up there in the stand, we're, you know, probably 60 or 70 yards away. It looked like, you know, he was trying to shove him away as opposed to going to slap him. The television, so that's us looking at it live. So I'm putting myself in the referee's situation as well. He didn't see it. If it was a slap, right, it was a sending off. But if the referee didn't see it, or the linesman, what can he do about it? He can't just make it up on the day. So listen, we'll see. And these things happen. Like, I thought Tipperary got a few decisions in the first half, maybe that probably, you know, another day would against them. Over the course of a game, they tend to balance themselves out. But listen, I don't like to see anybody getting sent off anyway. So,
if you were to pick your man in the match today, I know you talked about Ciaran Lynch there, the impact he made. Would he be your man in the match, or was there anyone else maybe that stood out above him?
Yeah, well, you could pick probably 5 different man the matches in the first half, and you could pick another 5 in the second half. But hurling is a 70-minute game. From Tipperary, you'd have to say Jason Ford is in the run. 7 points from playing a Munster final. It's incredible stuff. Bubbles the wire, the good first half. But over on the Limerick team, there's so many of them. I thought Barry Nash was one of his best performances, and he has been hurling well since he went back in the backs. He was fantastic today. Sean Finn, even though Jake Morris, you know, he gave him enough of it, but Sean Finn was still outstanding there himself as well. The half back line were brilliant. Kyle Hayes, you know, that wonderful goal. Like, we talk about great Munster final moments. You have that catch from Ken McGrath inside in Thurles. You have Davy Fitz's penalty in 95. You have Aidan Ryan's block and goal in the Munster final in 1991. That Kyle Hayes goal will go down as one of the great Munster final moments in my eyes. Midfield then and doing forward line, I thought Tom Morrissey, 5 points from play. Fantastic. I always say Hegarty, Ciaran Lynch, Tom Morrissey, one of them will always, or 2 of them will always turn up. Lucky enough for them today, Peter Casey scored 5 points from play, but my man of the match comes down to 2 guys, Ciaran Lynch and Tom Morrissey. I'd also like to mention Seamus Flanagan. He scored 1-3, so he's back in form. But my man of the match comes down between Ciaran Lynch and Tom Morrissey, and it was Ciaran Lynch. And the ball was there to be won, he won it. And if you don't have them lads, you can have all the tactics in the world, you can have all the guys that put the ball over the bar, but if you don't have enough of that, you'll win nothing. And that was probably the difference in that third quarter.
For Tipperary now, their next stage is the quarter-final. Do you feel Liam Sheedy needs to maybe shake up that starting 15, or does anything need to change going into that quarter-final meeting against whoever it may be?
Yeah, well, the next round of the qualifiers will be next weekend. That will suit Tipperary. They'll need the 2 weeks to probably get over the disappointment of this. It's very difficult to lose a 10-point lead. But people must remember, a 10-point lead in hurling is not like it was 10 years ago, because you can score, it's 25, 30 points scored regularly here. So a 10-point lead is nothing really anymore. What does Liam Sheedy have to do? Listen, he's the ultimate motivator himself. He has done it in the past. He's won Munster Championships. He's won All-Irelands. He's won minors. So he'll know what he has to do. I suppose if you go back and look at it, in 2010 they didn't win the Munster. They went on won the All-Ireland. His comeback here in 2019, they didn't win the Munster, and were well beaten in the Munster final by Limerick. And they went back and won the All-Ireland. So their focus will be just on, I'd say, getting the confidence back up. I'd say they will focus hugely on that first half. This is what you can do, lads. And then maybe show them only a short clip of the second half and show them, listen, but this is what happens if you don't keep it going for the 70 minutes. So there's enough there to go on.
And then for Limerick, are they still the team to beat?
Yeah, they're the team to beat. 10 trophies in 4 seasons, Munster Championships, All-Irelands. No matter what it is, if it was a game of cards over in the corner here to be trying to win it, they don't care. I suppose John Kiely deserves huge credit. Paul Kinnerk gets a lot of credit for the coaching, and he does a fantastic coaching job with these guys. John Kiely deserves huge credit as well. Like I was looking at since the manager, the title of the manager came into the GAA. Justin McCarthy has 6 Munster Championships as a manager coach. Bertie Troy has 5. Babs Keaton has 5. John Kiely now has 3 in a row. So he will be trying to push his guys, and his credit is going up and up and up. He's trying to win another All-Ireland Championship for this Limerick team, like that won once in 73. He's in sudden need of 2 and 3 years. So, no, I think Kiely, he'll keep their feet in the ground. He showed that by dropping Aaron Gillan. So no one will feel safe, I'd say, and that will motivate him. They'll probably use the Kilkenny All-Ireland semi-final as well of, 2019 to show the guys that, listen, you can be betting any game.
2 things we have to talk about, Tommy. 7,000 supporters in the ground here today. The atmosphere, we haven't got to feel it for a year properly. It was magical there. Being a big Tipperary supporter, it was hard to hear the Limerick fans at the end. But again, you get the hairs on the back of the neck standing up there. But also we have to talk about the heat. Like you there now, 10 minutes into this video, you've probably got a bit of a suntan going on there. But talk us there about the atmosphere we had today and also that heat that the players had to play in.
Yeah, sure, it was incredible. Like say at half time with the fans back in the stand, like tip was ringing around the stadium. And I was thinking of a friend of mine I was camping with him the last couple of days, Richie O'Shea, and fierce Tipperary man living in Kilkenny, and I was there, that man will be singing around the streets of Kilkenny there today. He will be delighted. But second half then when the whistle went to his Limerick, and I couldn't get over the hunger from the Limerick supporters, the hunger from the players. They were celebrating as if they never won one before, which I love. I just like when teams win it and they kind of put it down and say, no, listen, we're going to focus on the next day. If you do something extraordinary, that's 3 Munsters in a row. Counties, you can take nothing for granted. You win a Munster Championship, you celebrate out in the field with your family when you go home, your friends, and that once, the restrictions allow. And so it was wonderful to watch that when they won that. They were just so happy and they were so, delighted and proud. They weren't trying to hide away from the fact that they won a Munster again. So, no, it's great to have the fans back, and it means everything. And I thought a good one too was they spread around. Now, I know they have to because of COVID, but if there were 7,000 people here of a normal day and they're all huddled together, there would be no atmosphere. Whereas when the 7,000 was spread around the grounds, the atmosphere is fantastic.
And we had the Leinster final on yesterday. Kilkenny, another Leinster title for Brian Cody. He keeps on doing it. For you, looking at this Kilkenny team now, where do you rank them? Are they really up there now as contenders, or do they still just have a little bit more to do going into that semi-final?
Yeah, no, at the start of the year I listed them as my top 3. In my top 3 as contenders. Why? Because they have class around the field, and I say they have work ethic. You can never be complacent. You can't say they will always have work ethic, but they had it the last day and you'll hope they will have it again. Eoin Cody, brilliant player. Adrian Mullen, these guys have been doing it. They've been Club All-Irelands with Ballyhale as youngsters. I seen Eoin Cody scoring, I'd say it was 3-5 in a Leinster club semi-final or Leinster club final when he was only about 19 years of age. Ordinary players don't do that. So they have lovely players coming along that they're tough, they're able to win their own ball, but they have the magical wrists as well. And so with that, they have a lovely balance to their team. They're bringing in guys they've experience there as well. With Big Wally came in the last day against Wexford, outstanding when he came came on. And listen, TJ still, catching balls and winning balls, and his work rate is incredible. So I give that Kenny team every chance, to win the All-Ireland semi-final in 2 or 3 weeks' time.
Right, Tommy, it's time to go. Time to drive back up to Dublin and cry.
Paddy Anders, it's the end of Leinster Championship semi-final doubleheader today. Kildare have beaten Westmeath and Dublin have beaten Meath. Tell me what the feelings are after sitting through that on your birthday.
No, there were 2 good games. Look, what we expected. I think the Westmeath Kildare game to be relatively even, and it turned out that way. I think Westmeath had opportunities, they'd be kicking themselves. The Dublin Meath game was a little bit surprising. I think at half time Dublin were 11 points up, really clinical, probably Dublin's best 35 minutes of the season, and we expected them to be really in cruise control for the second half. But to be fair to Andy McEntee and Meath, everyone was hoping for a reaction. I think not just the Meath but across the Leinster Football Championship. And to be fair, 15 minutes into the second half they'd outscored Dublin 1-5 to a point. So they're one of the very, very few teams that have got a run like that on Dublin. To be fair, Dublin regained composure even though they were out of sorts in front of goal in the second half. 5 or 6 really uncharacteristic misses. But their experience, they kept the ball, they kept control, and they stopped Meath's momentum. So look, the good and the bad for Desi Farrell and Dublin looking back on that. But all in all, 2 really, really good games. And look, what the Leinster Championship probably really needed. There's been a lot of talk about the mismatches throughout this particular provincial championship over the last number of years, but that was 2 really good games today.
Let's start with the third quarter then in Dublin and Meath. Started the second half, Dublin went on the attack. Cormac Costello got turned over by Seamus Lavin. Meath broke and it led to a goal, a brilliant goal. Matthew Costello rounds the keeper and finishes it. As you said, 1-5 to a point over the next 15 minutes. 49 minutes on the clock before Ciaran Kilkenny scored. What happened to Dublin at the start of that second half? They were 11 points clear, as you said.
Yeah, it's hard to put your finger on it. I'm sure they're going to review it themselves over the next couple of days, but I thought as clinical as they were in the first half, they'd only 2 wides. They were really, really sharp. It was vintage Dublin. Conor O'Callaghan was spectacular, 1-3. Ciaran Kilkenny had scored 3 points, and Cormac Costello and Dean Rock. It was Dublin at their best, so it was so surprising to see them in the second half. Like I say, they had the opportunities, and just like they had 5 bad wides. Ciaran Kilkenny, despite scoring 5 points from play, he missed 2. He'd nearly scored them with his eyes closed. Sean Bugler, Davy Byrne hit the post. Dublin did still control the game, but they just very, very uncharacteristically some bad wides. That allowed Meath back into the game. And to be fair to Meath, we were looking, they didn't do a whole lot wrong in the first half. It was just the speed and the control which Dublin played at which really blew Meath away. They pushed up, they had nothing to lose. We were asking for it. We spoke at half time. Andy McEntee, he's there 4 years. If that was another bloodbath for Meath, you're kind of wondering where did they go from here. And to be fair, the players really stood up. Brian Ment and Shane McEntee driving them forward. Jordan Morris, actually, he started to loosen the shackles that Michael Fitzsimons had on him, and he kicked 2 great points as well. And Meath just got a bit of momentum. They had nothing to lose. So it was that energy that Meath brought, which definitely brought them back into it, and also just some uncharacteristic shooting from Dublin. Like I say, as good as they were in the first half and as clinical as they were probably as sloppy in the second half. So interesting to look back on it, all right.
You were delighted with that first half performance. As you said, Conor O'Callaghan with 1-3, Kilkenny with 2 or 3 points, Cormac Costello with 1-2. Dean Rock started his first championship game of the year. Was that a statement from Dublin after all the talk over the last couple of weeks? Did you feel like that was a statement that, look, we haven't gone away anywhere?
Look, I always say this, I don't think the Dublin players or the coaches are overly concerned with what goes on outside of the camp, but look, there's no getting away from it. There has been a lot of focus on it. There's a huge turnover in players. That's obviously with Stephen Cluxton over the last couple of weeks as well. The media and people outside the camp would have been focusing on that, but knowing the Dublin players and the coaches, they would have just focused on, okay, we didn't really perform to our standards against Wexford the first day out, and I expected a big reaction off them today in the first half, and they did exactly that. Everything that was a little bit off against Wexford was corrected in that first half. They moved the ball really, really well. Their handling, their interplay, and like I say, just some of the scores they got, it was Dublin at their best. Conor O'Callaghan and Ciaran Kilkenny to the fore. Evan Comerford had a brilliant game today, I thought. 2 really big saves. 1 in the first half from Jordan Morris and 1 from Nolan Jones towards the end of the game when Meath were really on the charge, and his kick-outs were excellent as well. So look, there's loads of positives for Dublin to take, but most certainly they'll be looking at that kind of second half and just again some uncharacteristic wides, and also letting Meath, like Meath did win the second half 1-7 to 5 points. So look, they'll have plenty to work on again before they play Kildare in what will be a really interesting Leinster final in a couple of weeks' time.
After the initial Meath burst at the start of the second half, Costello kicked the point just before the third quarter water break. And after that, we saw Niall Scully put the fist up. And Dublin's game management from there on was very good. Like, they kept Meath scoreless for about 15 minutes until the 67th minute. Meath got it back to 3 points. And then 3 points in injury time from Fenton, from Costello and from Kilkenny. That Brian Fenton point, how important was that? It was after 4 minutes of possession. You were sitting here beside me, you were screaming, keep the ball, keep the ball, keep the ball. They finally kind of started doing that again in the second half.
Yeah, and look, that's Dublin's experience. Like I say, they've been around the block. They've been in lots and lots of tight games in All-Ireland semi-finals and finals. It's probably the tightest game they've been in the Leinster Championship for a long time, but that was their experience and know-how. And like I say, I think that from the positive performance from Meath in the third quarter, Dublin wrestled back control there. Even though they weren't shooting the lights out like they normally would, they kept the ball, and Meath just ran out of steam. All the momentum, like the Meath crowd, it was great to get a bit of atmosphere in the stadium again. It was great because fans, supporters, we've been talking about the football championship, we need competitive games, and there was, when Meath got on a run, there was a really big atmosphere here in Croke Park, despite only having 16,000 people. Dublin sensed that, and in the fourth quarter, all their experience, like I said, guys like Niall Scully, Brian Howard, Johnny Cooper, Brian Fenton, they kept the ball for 4.5 minutes before Fenton finally clipped that score, and that really broke Meath's resolve in the end. And like I say, in the last couple of minutes they tagged on a couple of scores with Cormac Costello and Ciaran Kilkenny. But like I say, Dublin, there's loads of positives from them today, but certainly they'll be looking at areas to improve around that third quarter. But ultimately, that experience they have, the big game experience from some of their big players, even though they weren't at their best, they took the game away from Meath in that fourth quarter and just quelled all the momentum. And like I say, Fenton's point after 4.5 minutes was a classic example of Dublin's experience at play.
So Wexford kept them to 15 points. It was an 8-point win in the first game. The Meath game today, Meath had that massive third quarter, as you've mentioned. Dublin don't typically get these games in Leinster to warm them up for an All-Ireland semi-final, say, or a Leinster final before that. Will they be happy that this has happened so far this year? Because it seems like there's been a couple of cobwebs to be blown off.
I think they'll just be happy. They'll review it. They won't be worried about what's gone on in the past in the Leinster Championship. All they look at is how have we performed in these two games today. Like I say, through the National League, they won the National League jointly with Carey, probably without really getting out of third gear. They have been challenged a little bit more in Leinster, certainly down at Wexford Park and again today. And like I say, I think it's nearly a positive position for Desi and Dublin to be in. If they carried on, they were 11 points up at half time and they win the game by 15 or 16 points today. What do they really learn going into that Kildare game? Whereas now, again, it'll focus the minds. Okay, what did we do really well in the first half and areas we can improve on in the second half? Because from looking at Kildare today, probably in a similar situation as well, they mixed some really, really good play under Jack O'Connor with some really sloppy play against Westmeath. So both teams will be going into that with areas to improve on. And for Dublin, look, like I said, they'll move on. They look at Kildare, okay, what areas of our game can we improve on? And it's nearly a good thing for Dessie Farrell to be in, that nobody's going to be getting carried away. Let people talk about Kerry and Mayo putting up the big scores. Dublin will just be focused on the next challenge for them. And there are areas to improve for them. And it'll be interesting to see how they adapt to that against Kildare in 2 weeks' time.
To talk about the first game today, Kildare-Westmeath, surely Westmeath are going home tonight kicking themselves after all those wides.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be so disappointed. I spoke with Dessie Dolan after the game and you could just see frustration. It was such a big opportunity for them. Like I say, Kildare, they went 6 points up when they got the 2 goals. Just a little bit of magic from Daniel Flynn over that 2 or 3 minutes. A brilliant pass for Jimmy Hyland's goal, and then a spectacular goal himself. It was Daniel Flynn in full flow. That's what Kildare need. If they're going to compete with Dublin, they need their big players standing up and putting in big moments. And at that stage, you're thinking, right, Kildare, they've hauled the momentum. They've had a great couple of weeks from getting promotion to Division 1 at the end of the National League to now getting into a Leinster final. But to be fair to Westmeath, they really pushed on in the fourth quarter. They had 5 or 6 bad wides, and ultimately they had the opportunities to win that game. Jack Cooley's going to be so disappointed because it was a golden opportunity for Westmeath. Despite the wides, I think they had 2 big moments for goal chances, and ultimately if they get one of them, they probably would have won the game. They were 6 on 3 for John Heslin's opportunity. He forces a great save from Mark Donlan, but to be fair, you're thinking, could another pass to the back post and Jerry Egan palms the ball into an empty net, and then only 2 or 3 minutes later, again they win a long kick out. It's 5 on 3 bearing down on goal, and James Dolan, he takes the point, but absolutely there was a goal opportunity on, and ultimately that ruthlessness is what's cost Westmeath, and that's what will be so frustrating for them. It was kind of consistent with their National League performance as well. They were really competitive in all of their games in Division 2, but ultimately just fell short and got relegated, losing to Cork in the relegation playoff. And today again, they had the opportunities. They matched Kildare for athleticism, for physicality, for organisation. It was just that little bit of composure in front of the post which has ultimately cost them, and that's the most frustrating thing for them today, most certainly.
For Kildare, they've got the perfect example from straight after the second quarter. Dublin scored 1-3, and then Meath's third quarter performance, when they actually got at Dublin, they turned them over a number of occasions. What will Kildare be saying to themselves now in the build up to this game? Like, Jack O'Connor made light after the game of a question about preparing for the Leinster final. He was asked whether his goals had been achieved, and yeah, like Kildare facing Dublin now. Like, what are Kildare thinking after watching the Wexford game and the Meath game today?
Look, Kildare are coming like exactly what I said what Meath would today. Despite what everyone else thinks outside in the media or the general conversation around it, these players are coming to win championship games. So Meath, despite what everyone else outside of their camp would have said, I would absolutely no doubt that Andy McEnany and the Meath players were coming up today to try and beat Dublin. I've no doubt that that's what Jack O'Connor and Kildare will be coming up to do in the Leinster final. It's a big opportunity for them. For Kildare, I think there's definitely areas in their own game they're going to have to focus on. Like I say, they need their key players to stand up. It was looking at Kevin Feely after the game going across on crutches there. We don't know how bad that injury will be. He will be a big loss in a couple of weeks' time around midfield if he's not available. They need Daniel Flynn for 5 to 10 minutes today. He was the difference. Can they get 70 minutes out of him? That's what Jack O'Connor is going to be focusing on. And ultimately, Kildare, they're going to need to match Dublin for their athleticism. They're going to need to try and get in their faces and take Dublin out of their comfort zone. And on the flip side, Dublin are going to be looking at this and going, OK, what areas can we hurt Kildare, and how can we tie down some of their key players as well? So it's a fascinating game. And I think it's been a really positive Leinster Championship. There's been 3 or 4 really, really good games in it, right from Offaly Louth in the earlier rounds to the 2 semi-finals today. And look, we're hoping for a really competitive game in a couple of weeks' time. And despite what everyone else says, and despite what Jack O'Connor himself says, they're absolutely going to be gunning for that Leinster final to try and put in a big performance against Dublin.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.